The moment Clarissa Vaughn's champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, every conversation in Bellamy's died. But it wasn't the crystal that silenced the room, it was what came next. The city's most feared investor, drunk on power and Bollinger, had just made a catastrophic mistake. She'd chosen the wrong man to humiliate. The waiter she'd been tormenting for the past 20 minutes didn't flinch when her hand connected with his chest. He simply caught her wrist mid-strike with a precision that made her blood run cold. In that frozen second, 30 witnesses realized they'd been watching a predator disguised as prey. Before we dive into Evan's story, if you're enjoying this tale of hidden strength and ultimate justice, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin where it all started. The kitchen doors swung open with their familiar whisper, releasing Evan Brooks into the crystalline world of Bellamy's main dining room. He balanced the tray with practiced ease, his movements so economically efficient they barely registered to the wealthy patrons scattered throughout the space. Tuesday evenings at Bellamy's ran like clockwork. Predictable, controlled, profitable. The kind of environment where a single father could work doubles, keep his head down, and collect enough tips to cover rent and his daughter's dance classes. Evan had perfected the art of invisibility over his 18 months here. Not the supernatural kind, but the social species. The way staff become furniture to people whose bank accounts contain more zeros than most people's social security numbers. He'd learned to read a room within seconds of entering, to anticipate needs before they were voiced, to smile without it reaching his eyes when necessary. Tonight's crowd skewed hedge fund and venture capital, with a smattering of old pharmaceutical money occupying the corner tables. Evan knew the taxonomy by now. The hedge fund types ordered aggressively, treating menus like battlefields. The venture capital crowd performed casual wealth, ordering the second most expensive wine to signal sophistication without ostentation. Old money barely glanced at prices, their choices reflecting genuine preference rather than performance. Table 14 had been claimed by a party of 6 30 minutes ago. Evan had watched them arrive. 3 men in Tom Ford suits that probably cost more than his car, 2 women whose jewelry caught the light like captured stars, and her. Clarissa Vaughn. Even among Bellamy's regular parade of power, Clarissa commanded attention. Not through beauty, though she'd clearly invested heavily in its maintenance. Not through volume, though her laugh carried across the dining room like breaking glass. Clarissa dominated through the absolute certainty that the world existed to serve her whims. She moved through space as if gravity itself deferred to her preferences. Evan had served her twice before. Both times had been exercises in professional endurance. Clarissa treated service staff with the casual cruelty of someone who'd never questioned her right to do so. She didn't yell or throw tantrums. That would have been too volatile, too emotional. Instead, she deployed a calculated dismissiveness that reduced human beings to malfunctioning objects. As Evan approached table 14 with their appetizer course, he noted the telltale signs of an already difficult evening. 2 empty champagne bottles stood like sentinels beside the table. Clarissa's posture had loosened, her gestures growing wider, more emphatic. Her companions wore the slightly rigid expressions of people trapped in a social obligation with an unpredictable drunk. "Oysters for the lady," Evan said quietly, placing the plate before a brunette in emerald silk who offered him a grateful smile. "Beef carpaccio." "You." Clarissa's voice cut through his routine like a blade. "You're the one who messed up my order last month." Evan's hands continued their work, settling plates with geometric precision. "I apologize if there was any issue with your previous experience, ma'am. Tonight's kitchen has been—" "Don't!" Clarissa leaned back in her chair, champagne flute dangling from her fingers. "Don't give me the script. I'm not talking about the kitchen. I'm talking about you specifically. You brought me still water when I clearly ordered sparkling." The table had gone quiet. Evan finished placing the final appetizer before meeting Clarissa's eyes. "I'll make sure to verify your preferences this evening, ma'am." "Will you?" Clarissa smiled, but it contained no warmth. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who doesn't really care about getting things right. Someone who's just going through the motions. Someone who probably has bigger problems than remembering whether a customer wants bubbles in their water." One of the men, silver-haired, expensive watch, cleared his throat. "Clarissa, the food looks excellent. Maybe we should what, Richard? Pretend we don't notice when service is subpar? That's the problem with places like this. Clarissa gestured broadly, her champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim. They hire people who are here out of desperation, not dedication. You can see it in their eyes. This one? She pointed at Evan with her flute. This one is thinking about his problems right now instead of doing his job properly. Evan felt the familiar weight settle across his shoulders, the specific gravity of being perceived as less than human. He'd experienced it before Bellamy's, would likely experience it after, but knowing it was common didn't make it lighter. If there's anything I can bring you to improve your evening, please let me know. His voice remained level, professional. Your entrees will be out shortly. That's it? Clarissa laughed, the sound sharp and delighted. That's your response? God, they really do train you people to just take it, don't they? She turned to her companions. Watch this. Watch how he won't react no matter what I say. It's like they remove their spines during the interview process. The brunette and Emerald touched Clarissa's arm. Maybe we should just enjoy our... Oh, don't be boring, Michelle, Clarissa shook off the hand. I'm making a point about service culture, about how people accept these degrading positions because they have no other options. Her eyes fixed on Evan again, bright with champagne and malice. Tell me something. What did you do before this? Before you ended up bringing people food for tips? Evan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I've worked in various fields, ma'am. Various fields? Clarissa repeated the words mockingly. That's code for I couldn't hold down a real job, isn't it? Let me guess. You've got a kid you see every other weekend if you're lucky. Maybe an ex-wife who realized you were dead weight. Some apartment in a neighborhood you tell people is up and coming, when really it's just cheap. The accuracy of her cruelty landed like physical blows. Evan's daughter, Lily, wasn't limited to weekend visits. He had full custody, had fought for it, had rebuilt his entire life around being the parent she deserved. But Clarissa couldn't have known that. She was simply firing blind, confident that some ammunition would hit its target. Is there anything else I can bring you? Evan asked. His hands, hanging loosely at his sides, showed no tremor. Anything else? Clarissa leaned forward. How about some self-respect? Can you bring that? Because watching you stand there and take this is honestly depressing. She turned to the table. Seriously, doesn't it bother anyone else? The way service workers have to smile and nod while customers treat them like programmable robots? Richard tried again. Clarissa, you've made your point. The young man is just trying to... The young man! Clarissa laughed again. He's not young. Look at him. He's what? Mid-30s? Maybe pushing 40? That's not young for a waiter. That's failure. That's someone who ran out of chances and ended up here. Evan felt the eyes of other tables now, drawn by Clarissa's rising volume. The dining room had developed that particular tension that precedes either violence or viral video. His manager would intervene soon, protocol demanded it when guests became this disruptive. But some instinct told Evan that managerial intervention would only escalate Clarissa's need to establish dominance. I'll check on your entrees, he said simply, preparing to retreat. No. Clarissa's hand shot out, fingers closing around his wrist with surprising strength. We're not done. I want to know something. Her face had taken on an ugly flush, champagne and cruelty mixing into something volatile. What happens when you go home tonight? Do you look at yourself in the mirror and feel anything? Or have you gotten so good at being nobody that you don't even register anymore? Evan looked down at her hand on his wrist. For just a moment, muscle memory flickered. The precise angles, the pressure points, the economy of motion that could transform contact into control. But that person didn't exist anymore. That person had retired, had chosen this different life deliberately, had promised himself that particular skill set would stay buried. Ma'am, I need to check on other tables. His voice remained steady. If you'd release my wrist. Or what? Clarissa's fingers tightened. You'll do what exactly? Report me? To whom? Your manager? The same manager who knows I spent more on wine tonight than you make in a month? She pulled him slightly closer, her champagne breath hot on his face. Here's what happens if you complain. I make one phone call and you're done. Not just here, everywhere that matters. Because people like me, we talk to each other. We warn each other about problem staff. And suddenly, you'll find that nobody wants to hire the troublemaker who couldn't handle a little criticism. The table's other occupants had stopped pretending to eat. Michelle looked genuinely distressed. Richard had produced his phone, though whether to document or intervene remained unclear. The other three guests sat frozen, their expressions ranging from discomfort to morbid fascination. Across the dining room, Evan saw Marcus, the floor manager, moving toward them with purposeful strides. Relief and dread mixed in equal measures. Relief that intervention was coming. Dread that Clarissa's prediction might prove accurate, that her power might indeed extend far enough to make him unemployable. But before Marcus could reach them, Clarissa stood abruptly. Still gripping Evan's wrist, she rose to her full height in Christian Louboutin heels that brought her nearly eye level with him. "You know what your problem is?" Spit flecked her words now, champagne having stripped away the last veneer of control. "You're weak. You think you're being noble, being dignified, but really you're just weak. You let people like me walk all over you because deep down you know that's all you're good for. You're—" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes narrowing. "Wait. I remember you now. You're the one with the kid. Someone mentioned it last time. You've got a daughter you're raising alone." Her smile returned, sharper than before. That poor child. Growing up watching her father grovel for tips. What do you tell her you do for a living? How do you explain that Daddy brings people food because he couldn't manage anything better? Something shifted in Evan's eyes. Not rage, that would have been cleaner, simpler. What replaced his careful neutrality was colder, more controlled. It was the look of a man calculating costs and deciding which prices were worth paying. "My daughter," he said quietly, "is not part of this conversation." "Oh, but she is." Clarissa's grip on his wrist tightened further, her nails digging in. "She's the reason you stand here and take this. Because you need the money. Because you can't risk losing another job. Because at the end of the day, you're just—" Marcus arrived then, his voice carrying the careful authority of someone trained in de-escalation. "Ms. Vaughn, I apologize for any service issues this evening. Perhaps you could train your staff properly." Clarissa didn't release Evan's wrist, didn't even look at Marcus. "Perhaps you could hire people who don't bring their personal failures to work. Perhaps—" She yanked Evan's arm, trying to pull him closer to emphasize her point. "But physics has rules that even wealth can't rewrite." Evan's weight, his stance, his fundamental structure remained immovable. Clarissa stumbled slightly, her heel catching on the chair leg. And then everything accelerated. Later, witnesses would disagree about the exact sequence. Some would swear Clarissa threw her champagne at Evan's face. Others would insist she simply lost her balance. A few would claim she deliberately tried to knee him in the groin. But everyone agreed on what happened next. Clarissa's free hand came up fast, fingers curled into claws, aimed at Evan's face. And Evan moved. Not dramatically, not with the flourish of movie violence. He simply adjusted his stance by perhaps 6 inches, rotated his shoulder 15 degrees, and caught her wrist with his free hand. The movement took less than a second and involved no apparent force. But suddenly Clarissa found both her wrists controlled, her arms crossed at an angle that made any resistance uncomfortable without being painful. Her body weight shifted forward onto her toes. The dining room fell into the kind of silence that follows explosions. Evan held her there for perhaps 3 seconds, long enough to ensure she'd stopped struggling, short enough to avoid escalating into something darker. Then he released her with the same controlled precision he'd used to catch her, stepping back smoothly, his hands dropping to his sides. Clarissa stumbled back into her chair, her face cycling through shock, fury, and something that might have been fear. "I think," Evan said quietly, "we're done here." He turned to Marcus. "I'll be in the back." Then he walked away, his stride neither hurried nor slow, leaving behind a table of stunned millionaires and a dining room full of witnesses who were already reaching for their phones. The staff corridor behind Bellamy's kitchen smelled like industrial sanitizer and old fryer oil. Evan leaned against the cool tile wall, his hands trembling now that no one could see them. Not from adrenaline, that particular chemical dump had long ago stopped affecting him the way it did normal people. These shakes came from somewhere deeper, from the place where he'd buried a version of himself that he'd sworn would never surface again. He'd moved on instinct, pure muscle memory from a life he'd left behind. And in doing so, he'd potentially destroyed everything he'd built. Footsteps approached from the dining room. Evan didn't need to look to know it was Marcus. The floor manager had a distinctive gait, quick but not rushed, efficient without seeming hurried. Evan. Marcus's voice carried complex harmonics of concern and calculation. What the hell just happened out there? She attacked me. The words came out flat, factual. I defended myself. That's not... Marcus ran a hand through his thinning hair. That's not how it looked, man. It looked like you grabbed her, like you knew exactly how to control her. Because I did. Evan met Marcus's eyes. She came at my face. I stopped her. Would you rather I'd let her scratch me? I'd rather you'd called for help. I was right there. There wasn't time. Marcus studied him for a long moment. They'd worked together for over a year, had shared countless shifts, had developed the wordless communication of professional colleagues. But Evan could see Marcus recalibrating, reassessing, viewing him through a new lens. Who are you? Marcus asked finally. Really? Before Evan could answer, the corridor door burst open. Clarissa stormed through, followed by a trailing wake of her dinner companions and Raphael, the restaurant's general manager. Her face had gone blotchy with rage, her careful makeup creasing at the corners of her eyes. That's him! She pointed at Evan like a prosecutor identifying a defendant. That's the man who assaulted me. Raphael, always impeccably dressed, always composed, looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. Ms. Vaughn, I'm sure we can resolve this. Resolve? Clarissa's laugh was sharp enough to cut. He put his hands on me. He grabbed me in front of 30 witnesses. After you grabbed him first, Michelle said quietly from the doorway. The brunette in emerald silk looked deeply uncomfortable but determined. Clarissa, you were holding his wrist. You pulled him. You took a swing at him. I did not. Clarissa whirled on her friend. I was making a point. I was gesturing. He's the one who... You attacked him. This from Richard, who'd emerged behind Michelle with his phone still in his hand. I recorded some of it, not the beginning, but enough. Clarissa's face went pale, then red. You what? I recorded it. Richard's voice carried the weight of someone who'd made an uncomfortable but necessary decision. Because you were drunk and getting aggressive, and I thought we might need documentation. He looked at Raphael. She grabbed his wrist first. Wouldn't let go. Made increasingly personal attacks about his daughter. Then she took a swing at his face. He blocked it. That's all. That's not... Clarissa started, but Raphael cut her off. Ms. Vaughn, perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office. Your office? Clarissa's voice climbed an octave. I'm not the one who should be explaining myself. He's your employee. He defended himself. Raphael's tone remained professionally neutral, but Evan caught the subtle shift in pronouns, the careful distance Raphael was establishing. From what these witnesses are saying, you initiated physical contact. You escalated it. And when you became violent, he stopped you without harming you. Without... Clarissa looked around wildly, seeking support. Are you all insane? He's a waiter. I'm a customer who became physically aggressive with staff, Raphael finished. Which means I need you to gather your belongings and leave immediately. The corridor fell silent. Clarissa stared at Raphael like he'd spoken a foreign language. You're throwing me out? I'm asking you to leave before I have to call the police and report an assault on my employee. An assault? Clarissa's voice rose to a near shriek. He assaulted me. Multiple witnesses say otherwise. Richard held up his phone. And I've got video that backs them up. Clarissa looked at Richard, at Michelle, at her other dinner companions. Whatever she saw in their faces made her expression harden into something ugly and vindictive. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she said to Raphael, her voice dropping to something colder than her earlier rage. I have investors in this building. I have connections that could shut you down. By tomorrow morning, every food critic, every blogger, every person with influence in this city will know that Bellamy's employs violent staff who attack customers. Or, Marcus said quietly, by tomorrow morning, everyone will know you got drunk and attacked a waiter, and he defended himself without even bruising you. He glanced at Evan. Because you're not bruised, are you, Ms. Vaughn? Clarissa looked down at her wrists, at the absence of marks. Evan's control had been absolute. No grip strong enough to leave evidence, just pressure precise enough to neutralize threat. "This isn't over," Clarissa said finally. She turned to Evan, her eyes glittering with malice. "You think you've won something tonight? You haven't. I will destroy you. Your job, your reputation, your custody of that daughter you're so protective of. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd never touched me." She swept out, her remaining companions trailing behind with various expressions of discomfort. Michelle paused at the door, offering Evan an apologetic look. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "you showed remarkable restraint. Most men would have reacted much more aggressively." Then she was gone, leaving Evan alone with Marcus and Raphael in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the corridor. Raphael exhaled slowly. "Evan, I need you to tell me the truth. Do you have any kind of training, security work, military?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Evan could lie, should lie. But these men deserved some version of truth. "I used to work in personal security," he said carefully. "Long time ago. Different life." "How long ago?" Raphael pressed. 8 years. Before Lily was born." Marcus whistled low. "You were a bodyguard?" "Something like that." Raphael's expression suggested he heard everything Evan wasn't saying. "And you left that career because—" "Oh, because I wanted to be there for my daughter. Security work meant travel, irregular hours, situations that weren't compatible with being a present father." Evan met Raphael's eyes. "I chose Lily over everything else, no regrets." "But you kept the skills." "You never really lose them. You just don't use them." Raphael nodded slowly, processing. "Well, you used them tonight, and probably saved us from a much worse situation. If you'd let her hit you, we'd be dealing with blood, injury reports, maybe a lawsuit from you." He paused. "That said, I need to think about what happens next. That woman meant what she said. She will try to destroy us, you specifically, but also Bellamy's. I need to talk to ownership, figure out our legal position." "You want me to leave?" Evan said flatly. "I want you to go home. Be with your daughter. Let me handle the immediate fallout." Raphael's expression softened slightly. "You're not fired, Evan, but you're also not safe. If Clarissa Vaughn wants to make your life hell, she has the resources to do it." "She threatened my custody." The words came out harder than Evan intended. "She specifically mentioned Lily." "I know." Raphael's voice carried genuine sympathy. "And I'll do everything I can to prevent that. We've got witnesses. We've got video. We've got a clear case that you acted in self-defense." He hesitated. "But I'm not going to lie to you. Powerful people like Clarissa don't fight fair. And they don't lose gracefully." Evan nodded, accepting the reality. "When will you know?" "Give me 24 hours. I'll call you tomorrow evening." Raphael extended his hand. "For what it's worth, you handled an impossible situation with more restraint than I would have managed. Most men would have let her hit them and then sued. You just neutralized the threat and walked away." They shook hands. Marcus clapped Evan on the shoulder. "Get out of here," Marcus said. "Hug your kid. And maybe don't answer the phone for any numbers you don't recognize." Evan changed out of his uniform in the empty locker room, his movements mechanical. His phone buzzed, a text from Amy, his ex-girlfriend who watched Lily on his late shifts. "Everything okay?" "Lily's asking when you'll be home." He texted back. "Leaving now. Home in 20. In the parking lot, the November air bit through his jacket. Evan's hands had stopped shaking. His heartbeat had returned to its normal rhythm, but something deeper remained unsettled. The recognition that he'd crossed a line he'd sworn never to approach again. For 8 years, he'd been just Evan. Just a father. Just a man trying to build a quiet life for his daughter. Tonight, for less than 3 seconds, he'd become someone else. Someone he'd thought he'd successfully buried. The drive home took him through familiar streets made strange by late-night emptiness. The city at 11 p.m. existed in a liminal space between day and night, populated by shift workers, insomniacs, and people like him. Folks whose lives operated on schedules that didn't align with normal human rhythms. He pulled up outside the small house he rented in Riverside, a working-class neighborhood that hadn't yet been gentrified out of affordability. Amy's car sat in the driveway, her porch light burning. She'd probably waited up, would want to know why he'd left work early. But before he could construct a story, his phone rang. Unknown number. Evan stared at the screen, Marcus's warning echoing in his mind. But curiosity won over caution. Hello? Evan Brooks? A woman's voice, unfamiliar and professional. Who's asking? My name is Diana Chen. I'm a reporter with the Metropolitan Herald. I'm calling about an incident at Bellamy's restaurant tonight involving you and Clarissa Vaughn. Evan's stomach sank. How did you get this number? That's not important. What is important is that I'd like to hear your side of the story. Miss Vaughn has already issued a statement claiming she was assaulted by restaurant staff. I've spoken with several witnesses who say something very different happened. I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond. No comment. Evan moved to disconnect. Wait. Diana's voice sharpened with urgency. Mr. Brooks, this story is going to run with or without your input. Clarissa Vaughn is currently spinning a narrative that makes you look like a violent aggressor who attacked a female customer. I've got witnesses and video that contradict that. But if you don't talk to me, the only voice the public hears will be hers. Evan closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the car's headrest. If I talk to you, what happens? I write what actually occurred. I include witness testimony. I provide context that shows you acted in self-defense. Diana paused. Look, I've covered Clarissa Vaughn before. I know what she's capable of. I've seen her destroy people's reputations because they didn't defer to her quickly enough. If you stay silent, she wins by default. And if I talk? Then at least the truth is on record. Then if she tries to hurt you, she has to do it while the public knows she's the aggressor, not the victim. It was good logic, dangerous logic, but good. 24 hours, Evan said. Call me tomorrow night, after I've talked to my employer and made sure I still have a job. Fair enough. But Mr. Brooks? One more thing. The witnesses I spoke with said you handled Ms. Vaughn with what one called professional precision. They said you moved like someone with serious training. That's not typical for a restaurant server. I used to work security, Evan said carefully. A long time ago. What kind of security? The kind I don't talk about. Good night, Miss Chen. He disconnected before she could press further. The house's front door opened and Amy emerged, her expression concerned. Amy Rivera had been Lily's babysitter before becoming Evan's friend, then briefly his girlfriend, then, after they both realized the romantic chemistry wasn't quite right, settling into something more valuable, a co-parent figure who cared for Lily like family. She was studying nursing at the community college, working part-time at a clinic, and somehow still found time to watch Lily on Evan's late shifts. You're home early, she said, arms crossed against the cold. Everything okay? Got into a situation at work. Evan climbed out of his car, suddenly exhausted. Customer got aggressive. I defended myself. Now it's complicated. Amy's expression shifted from concern to alarm. How complicated? Raphael said to give him 24 hours. That complicated. Jesus. Amy stepped back to let him inside. Come on. Lily's asleep, but you look like you need to talk. Inside the warm house, everything felt fragile and precious. Lily's backpack hung by the door, stuffed with school papers and her battered copy of Charlotte's Web. Her shoes, light-up sneakers she'd begged for and he'd saved for, sat neatly on the mat. Pictures she'd drawn covered the refrigerator, a gallery of stick figures and rainbow suns. This was what he'd protected. This careful, quiet life built from the ruins of his past. And tonight he'd risked it all because a wealthy drunk had pushed him too far. In the kitchen, Amy poured him coffee from the pot she'd kept warm. Talk to me. So he did. Not everything, never everything, but enough. The escalating insults, the physical contact, the moment Clarissa's hand came at his face, his instinctive response, the aftermath. Amy listened without interrupting, her nursing student's training giving her the patience to hear a story completely before diagnosing. When he finished, she sat quiet for a moment, processing. She threatened Lily? Amy's voice went cold. She specifically mentioned your custody? Yes. That bitch. Amy never cursed around Lily, but she'd grown up in Riverside, knew how to deploy profanity like a weapon when needed. What's she going to do? Claim you're unfit because you wouldn't let her hit you? She has resources, lawyers, connections. Evan stared into his coffee. People like her don't need facts, they just need influence. But you've got witnesses, video. I know, Raphael promised to handle it, but Amy… Evan met her eyes. What if it's not enough? What if she goes after my custody anyway? What if… Stop. Amy reached across the table, gripping his hand. You're spiraling. We don't know what she'll do yet. For now, you go upstairs, you look at your sleeping daughter, and you remember that you did the right thing tonight. You protected yourself without hurting anyone. That's what you always do. You find the third option when everyone else only sees two. The third option, Evan repeated quietly. Yeah. She wanted you to either take her abuse or respond with violence. You did neither. You stopped her without harming her, then walked away. That's not weakness. That's strength. Evan squeezed her hand gratefully. Thank you. Go on. Check on Lily. I'll lock up on my way out. Upstairs, Lily's room smelled like lavender detergent and childhood, that indefinable scent of innocence. His daughter slept curled on her side, her dark hair spilled across the pillow, one arm draped over the stuffed elephant he'd won for her at a carnival last summer. She was 7, small for her age, with his eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Her mother, Sarah, dead 3 years from an overdose that Evan had been powerless to prevent, that he'd watched develop with horror and helpless rage. Sarah had been his first attempt at normal after leaving security work, a relationship built on hope and denial that collapsed under the weight of her addiction. They'd lasted long enough to create Lily, to briefly imagine a functional family, before Sarah's disease made that impossible. Full custody had been inevitable, painful but inevitable. And Evan had sworn on everything sacred that he would be enough for Lily, both parents condensed into one imperfect human doing his absolute best. He sat carefully on the edge of her bed. Lily stirred, one eye cracking open. Daddy? Her voice was sleep-thick, confused. Hey, Pumpkin, sorry to wake you. You're home early. She pushed herself up slightly, squinting at him in the dim light from the hallway. Did something happen? Kids, Evan thought, had radar for parental stress that operated on frequencies adults couldn't detect. Just a long day. Wanted to see you. Amy said you might be late. We made cookies. Lily's priorities remained blessedly simple. I saved you the ones with the most chocolate chips. You're the best daughter in the entire world. I know. She grinned, then her expression turned more serious. Daddy, are we okay? What do you mean, sweetie? Tommy at school said his dad lost his job and now they might have to move. Are we going to move? Evan felt his chest tighten. No, Pumpkin, we're not moving. Promise? He shouldn't promise. Couldn't really promise. But looking at his daughter's worried face, he heard himself say, I promise. Lily settled back into her pillow, reassured. Okay. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, Lily. More than anything. Within seconds, she drifted back to sleep, her breathing evening out. Evan sat there for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall, committing this moment to memory. Whatever happened next, he needed to remember why it mattered, why he'd walked away from a career that paid better, offered more excitement, provided more clear-cut purpose. This was the purpose. The sleeping child who trusted him absolutely, who needed him to be both strong enough to protect her and gentle enough to soothe her fears. Everything else was secondary. He left her room quietly, pulling the door to the 3/4 position she preferred, not fully closed, not fully open. Downstairs, Amy had already left, the front door locked behind her. The house sat silent around him, holding its breath for whatever morning would bring. Evan's phone buzzed. Another text, this time from Marcus. Twitter is already blowing up. Someone posted about the incident. Clarissa Vaughn is trending. Might want to stay offline for a while. Against his better judgment, Evan opened Twitter. The trending tag confirmed Marcus's warning. Videos, grainy, shot from multiple angles, showed fragments of the confrontation. Clarissa grabbing his wrist, her hand coming toward his face. His precise, controlled response. The aftermath. The comments divided into predictable camps. Some defended Clarissa, claiming the videos were taken out of context, that they didn't show what preceded the physical contact. Others praised Evan's restraint, calling him a hero for defending himself without causing injury. A third group speculated about his background, his training, his history. One comment stopped him cold. Anyone else notice how he moved? That's not luck or reflex. That's training, professional training. Who is this guy really? Evan closed the app, turned off his phone, sat in the dark kitchen with only the refrigerator's hum for company. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Raphael's decision, Clarissa's retaliation, Diana Chen's article. The court of public opinion weighing in on a situation they understood only through fragments and videos. But tonight, for these last hours before dawn, Evan Brooks was just a father in a quiet house, drinking cold coffee and hoping he'd made the right choices. Outside, Riverside settled into late-night silence. A dog barked in the distance. A car passed, its headlights sweeping across the curtains. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary neighborhood, holding people with ordinary problems. Except Evan's problems had stopped being ordinary the moment Clarissa Vaughn's hand came at his face. The moment 8 years of careful control had crystallized into 3 seconds of undeniable truth. He was not just a waiter, had never been just a waiter, and tomorrow everyone would start asking exactly who and what he really was. Evan drained his coffee, set the cup in the sink, and headed upstairs to not sleep. The answers to those questions were coming, whether he wanted to give them or not. Dawn arrived with the subtle cruelty of inevitability. Evan had managed perhaps 90 minutes of actual sleep, the rest spent staring at ceiling shadows and running worst-case scenarios through his mind. When his alarm buzzed at 6:30, he was already awake, already dressed, already brewing coffee in the kitchen while his body operated on the autopilot of exhaustion. Lily appeared at 7, her hair a chaos of tangles, still wearing the unicorn pajamas that were getting too small, but that she refused to abandon. She climbed into her chair at the kitchen table with the boneless grace of children, immediately reaching for the cereal box. "You look tired, Daddy." She poured Cheerios with more enthusiasm than accuracy, O's bouncing across the table. "Did you have bad dreams?" "Something like that." Evan caught the errant cereal, depositing them into her bowl. "How'd you sleep?" "Good. I dreamed about the recital." Lily's dance recital was 3 weeks away, a production of The Nutcracker that had consumed her thoughts for months. "Miss Jennifer says I'm getting really good at my pirouettes." "You are. You're amazing." Evan poured milk over her cereal, careful not to overfill. "You excited about school today?" "We're doing multiplication tables." Lily made a face. "Tommy says multiplication is stupid because calculators exist." "Tommy says a lot of things." "That's what Amy said too." Lily spooned cereal into her mouth, milk dribbling down her chin. "Daddy, why was Amy here so late? Is everything okay?" Kids and their radar. "Everything's fine, Pumpkin. I just got off work early and wanted to talk to her about some grown-up stuff." "About your job?" "Sort of." Lily studied him with eyes that saw too much. "Are you worried?" "A little," Evan admitted, because lying to Lily had always felt like betraying something sacred. "But it's nothing you need to worry about. That's what grown-ups do. We worry so kids don't have to." "That doesn't seem fair." "No," Evan agreed quietly. "It doesn't, but that's how it works." She accepted this with a child's pragmatism, returning her attention to breakfast. Evan watched her eat, memorizing details. The gap where she'd lost a tooth last week, the freckles across her nose from last summer's sun, the way she hummed tunelessly while chewing. These small moments felt suddenly precious, fragile in a way they hadn't been yesterday. His phone buzzed. A text from Raphael. "Can you come in at 10? Need to talk before lunch rush." Evan texted back confirmation, then added, "Good news or bad?" The response took 3 minutes. Complicated news. "Bring documentation of your custody arrangement if you have it." Evan's stomach dropped. If Raphael needed custody documentation, Clarissa had already made good on her threat, already deployed her resources toward destroying him through the one vulnerability she'd identified. He got Lily ready for school with mechanical efficiency, teeth brushed, hair tamed into a ponytail, backpack checked for homework. They walked the 4 blocks to Riverside Elementary through morning air that smelled like car exhaust and someone's bacon. Other parents and kids populated the sidewalk, a familiar parade of working-class families getting on with their day. At the school entrance, Lily hugged him with surprising fierceness. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Pumpkin. Have a good day." "You too." She pulled back, her expression suddenly worried again. "Promise?" "I'll try my absolute best." She seemed satisfied with that, joining the stream of children flowing through the doors. Evan watched until she disappeared into the building, then turned for home, his mind already churning through possibilities. Back at the house, he found the folder he kept in his desk's bottom drawer. Legal documents from Sarah's death, the custody hearing, character references from neighbors and teachers, proof of his fitness as a parent. The folder represented 2 years of bureaucratic validation of what he'd always known, that Lily was better off with him than anyone else. He showered, dressed in the closest thing he owned to professional clothing, dark jeans, a button-down shirt, the leather jacket Amy had bought him last Christmas. In the mirror, he looked like a man trying to present respectability on a limited budget. Would it be enough? His phone rang. Diana Chen. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for agreeing to talk. Can I ask you a few questions now?" "I'm on my way to meet with my employer," Evan said. "Can this wait until tonight like we agreed?" "I'm afraid not. My editor wants to run the story this afternoon, before Clarissa Vaughn's PR team controls the entire narrative. They've already distributed a statement claiming you attacked her unprovoked. It's gaining traction." Evan closed his eyes. "What do you need to know?" "Your background. You told me you worked security. Can you be more specific?" "Private security, corporate protection details, executive transport." "All true, if incomplete." "For how long?" 6 years, give or take." "And you left because—" "My daughter. I needed a job with regular hours, minimal travel, no risk of bringing work home." "Also true, if carefully edited." "The witnesses I spoke with said you handled Ms. Vaughn with what one called military precision. Were you in the military?" Evan hesitated. This was the line he'd never wanted to approach. "I had some training before security work. Nothing relevant now." "Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be frank with you. Clarissa Vaughn's statement claims you're a violent individual with a dangerous past who shouldn't have access to vulnerable people, specifically your daughter. She's strongly implying you're unfit for custody. If you want to counter that narrative, you need to be honest about who you are." "Who I am," Evan said slowly, "is a single father working 2 jobs to provide for his kid. That's all that matters." "But it's not all you are. And if you don't tell me, Clarissa's team will dig it up and spin it their way. At least give me enough context to present the truth." The truth. What a dangerous, multifaceted concept. The truth was that before private security, Evan had spent 4 years in a specialized unit that officially didn't exist. The truth was that he'd been trained to neutralize threats with maximum efficiency and minimal evidence. The truth was that he'd left that life not because of Lily, but because of what it had cost him. The pieces of his humanity he'd traded for operational effectiveness. But Diana Chen didn't need that truth. Nobody did. "I served in the Army," he said finally. "Infantry. Nothing special. Got out, worked security, had a daughter, changed careers to be present for her. That's the whole story." "Mr. Brooks, that's all I'm saying. Print what you want, but don't expect me to give you ammunition to turn this into something it's not. I defended myself from a drunk customer. That's the entire story." He disconnected before she could press further. His hands were shaking again, not from fear, but from the effort of maintaining walls that kept wanting to crumble. The drive to Bellamy's took him through neighborhoods that marked class divides like geological strata. Riverside's modest houses gave way to downtown's gleaming towers, then to the restaurant district where establishments like Bellamy's catered to people for whom a Tuesday dinner cost what Evan made in a week. In daylight, Bellamy's looked different, less glamorous, more like a stage with the house lights on. Evan parked in the employee lot, noting the absence of other cars. Raphael had wanted this conversation private. Inside, the restaurant smelled of lemon oil and yesterday's wine. Raphael waited in his office, a cramped space behind the kitchen that served as nerve center for the operation. He looked like he'd slept as poorly as Evan. "Thanks for coming," Raphael gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Coffee?" I'm good. Evan sat, the custody folder heavy in his hands. You asked for documentation. Yeah. Raphael's expression was grave. Evan, Clarissa Vaughn has filed a police report claiming you assaulted her. She's also contacted Child Protective Services with allegations that you're a violent individual who poses a danger to your daughter. The words landed like physical blows. Evan had expected retaliation, but this was scorched earth. On what basis? On the basis that you physically restrained her and, according to her statement, threatened her. She's claiming you told her you could hurt her easily if you wanted to. That's a lie. Evan's voice remained level despite the rage building in his chest. I never said anything like that. I know. The witnesses all say the same thing. You barely spoke. But she's got lawyers who are very good at constructing narratives. Raphael leaned forward. The good news is that multiple witnesses, including Richard Holbrook, who's got significant credibility in this city, have given statements supporting your version. Richard sent me his video this morning. I've forwarded it to my lawyer. Your lawyer? Bellamy's lawyer, technically, but she's agreed to represent you as well if this goes further. Pro bono. Raphael managed a tired smile. Turns out Richard Holbrook has been waiting for an excuse to go after Clarissa Vaughn for years. She screwed him on a business deal 5 years ago. He sees this as an opportunity for payback. So he's helping me to hurt her? He's helping you because it's the right thing to do, and because it happens to also hurt her. I'll take wins wherever they come from. Raphael's expression sobered. But Evan, you need to understand what you're up against. Clarissa's PR team is already working overtime. They've got friendly journalists running stories about how elite restaurants need better security to protect patrons from unstable staff. They're painting you as a powder keg waiting to explode. And CPS believed her? CPS has to investigate any allegation involving child safety. They're opening a case, which means a social worker will contact you for an interview, probably within the next few days. They'll want to inspect your home, talk to Lily's teachers, review your employment history. Evan's hands tightened on the folder. They'll dig into my background. They will. Which brings me to my next question. Is there anything in your past that could be used against you? Arrests, military discharge issues, anything Clarissa's team might find? No arrests. Honorable discharge. Clean record. All true. His unit's operations had been classified. His involvement officially non-existent. There was nothing to find because officially he'd never been there. Good. That helps. Raphael hesitated. Evan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. The way you moved last night, the witnesses all commented on it. Richard said it reminded him of bodyguards he'd seen in Moscow. Michelle said it looked like something from a Jason Bourne movie. What exactly did you do before becoming a waiter? I told you, private security. That's not the whole story. It's all the story you need. Evan met Raphael's eyes. I worked security. I was good at it. I got out because it wasn't compatible with being a father. That's all that's relevant. Raphael studied him for a long moment. Fine. Keep your secrets. But understand that if Clarissa's team digs up something you're not telling me, I can't help you defend against it. There's nothing to find. I hope you're right. Raphael pulled a business card from his desk drawer. This is Jennifer Torres, the attorney I mentioned. She wants to meet with you this afternoon if possible. She's going to coach you through the CPS interview and start building a defense in case Clarissa escalates to a civil suit. A civil suit? Evan took the card cardstock thick and expensive. For what? Assault, emotional distress, damage to her reputation. She could claim anything. Most of it won't stick, but she can afford to tie you up in court for years if she wants. Raphael's voice carried genuine sympathy. I'm sorry, Evan. You defended yourself. You did everything right, and now you're being punished for it. Story of my life. Evan stood, tucking the card and folder under his arm. Am I fired? No, but I can't schedule you until this is resolved. Too much liability if something else happens. Raphael stood as well, extending his hand. For what it's worth, you're one of the best servers I've ever worked with. Reliable, professional, good with guests. When this blows over, you've got a place here. And if it doesn't blow over? Raphael's silence was answer enough. Evan left through the back entrance, avoiding the main dining room where staff were beginning prep for lunch service. In the parking lot, he sat in his car for several minutes, processing. His phone showed 15 missed calls from unknown numbers, reporters probably, looking for quotes. He ignored them all, dialing the number on Jennifer Torres's card instead. She answered on the second ring. Jennifer Torres? Ms. Torres, this is Evan Brooks. Raphael gave me your number. Mr. Brooks, yes, I've been expecting your call. Her voice was crisp, efficient. Can you come to my office at 2 this afternoon? I need to go over your case before CPS contacts you. What should I bring? Everything you have related to your custody arrangement, employment history, and character references. Also, I'll need you to write out a complete timeline of last night's incident while it's fresh. Don't embellish. Don't minimize. Just facts. Will I have to pay you? Not up front. Richard Holbrook has agreed to cover my fees as part of what he's calling pro bono community service. Between you and me, he just wants to watch Clarissa Vaughn squirm, but you benefit either way. Why is he doing this? Because she's destroyed enough lives. Because somebody needs to stand up to her. Because you happened to be in the right place at the wrong time and handled yourself with remarkable restraint. Jennifer paused. Mr. Brooks, I've represented a lot of people. Some guilty, some innocent, most somewhere in between. You strike me as someone who was put in an impossible situation and responded without causing harm. That's rare, and it's worth defending. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got a fight ahead of us. See you at 2. She disconnected, leaving Evan alone with his thoughts and the gradually warming car. 2 o'clock gave him 4 hours. 4 hours to write a timeline, to organize documents, to construct a narrative of his life that was true enough to be defensible, but carefully edited to protect what needed protection. He drove to a coffee shop in a neutral neighborhood, not Riverside where neighbors might ask questions, not downtown where reporters might find him. The place was called Brood Awakening, perpetually half full of laptop workers and students. Nobody would notice one more tired man staring at a computer screen. Evan ordered black coffee and claimed a corner table. He opened his laptop, a second-hand Dell that ran slowly but reliably, and began typing. The timeline started simple. Arrived at work at 4 p.m. Assigned to table 14. Party of 6 arrived at approximately 7:30 p.m. Initial service went smoothly. But as he typed, the memories sharpened. Clarissa's laugh like breaking glass, the weight of her contempt, the specific moment when professional insult became personal attack, the sick twist in his gut when she mentioned Lily. He typed it all, stripping emotion from fact, reducing the evening to a sequence of events that would read clinically to investigators. Grabbed my wrist, refused to release despite requests, made increasingly personal comments, attempted to strike my face. I blocked and controlled her arms without applying excessive force, released her immediately, walked away. It sounded so simple on paper, so clean. It didn't capture the rage he'd suppressed, the discipline required to neutralize without harming, the years of training that had made those 3 seconds possible. His phone buzzed. A text from Amy. Are you okay? Saw the news? Call me. He texted back. Meeting with lawyer at 2. Can you get Lily from school? Already planning on it. Love you both. Another buzz. This time an email from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line read, Opportunity. Against his better judgment, Evan opened it. Mr. Brooks, my name is Marcus Webb. I run a private security consulting firm based in the city. I've seen the videos from Bellamy's. More importantly, I've done some research into your background. You were good at what you did. Very good. And it's clear you've been wasting your skills serving food to people who don't appreciate them. I'd like to offer you a position with my firm. Executive protection, training, consultation. The pay is 6 times what you're making now. The hours are flexible. And the work would actually use your talents. Call me if you're interested. The number below reaches me directly. Respectfully, Marcus Webb. Evans stared at the email, feeling the temptation like gravity. 6 times his current pay would mean Lily could have everything: better schools, dance lessons with the best teachers, college funds, security. It would mean freedom from constantly calculating which bills to pay first, from choosing between fixing the car and buying groceries. But it would also mean returning to a world he'd left for good reasons. A world of violence, even if controlled. A world where operational necessities sometimes required moral compromises. A world that had slowly eroded his humanity until he'd barely recognized himself. He deleted the email without responding. The coffee shop's door chimed. Evan glanced up reflexively, his training never fully dormant. A woman entered, mid-40s, expensively dressed, moving with the careful precision of someone aware of being watched. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on Evan and holding Diana Chen, the reporter. She approached his table without hesitation. "Mr. Brooks, I thought I might find you somewhere like this." "I told you I'd call tonight." "You did. But my editor is running the story in an hour, and I wanted to give you one last chance to add your voice." Diana gestured to the empty chair. "May I?" Evan wanted to refuse, but the calculating part of his brain that never fully shut down recognized an opportunity. 5 minutes. She sat, pulling out a small recorder. "Do you mind?" "Yes, no recording." "Notes, then." She produced a notebook instead, her handwriting quick and efficient. "Let me lay out what I've got so far. Clarissa Vaughn, known for bullying service staff, got drunk and increasingly aggressive with you at Bellamy's last night. Multiple witnesses confirmed she grabbed you first, refused to release you, made personal attacks including threats regarding your daughter. When she attempted to strike you, you defended yourself with what witnesses describe as professional precision, neutralizing her without causing injury. Then you walked away. How am I doing?" "Accurately." "Good. Now here's what Clarissa's team is pushing. They're saying you have a history of violence, that you were dishonorably discharged from the military, that you've been investigated for child abuse, that you're unstable and dangerous." Diana looked up from her notes. "None of that is true, is it?" "No." "Then help me prove it. Give me something I can verify. Military records, character references, anything that contradicts her narrative." Evan considered. "I was honorably discharged after 4 years of service. I have documentation. I've never been investigated for child abuse. CPS is only opening a case now because of her false allegations. And the only violence I've ever committed was in self-defense." "Can I see the discharge papers?" "They're at home." "Will you send me a copy?" "Maybe, after I talk to my lawyer." Diana nodded, making notes. "Fair enough. Let me ask you something else. Why didn't you fight back harder? You clearly had the training to hurt her if you'd wanted to. Why show restraint?" "Because hurting people should always be the last option, not the first." The words came out harsher than Evan intended. "Because violence doesn't solve problems. It just creates new ones. Because I'm a father, and I want my daughter to learn that strength means protecting, not dominating." Diana wrote quickly, her expression suggesting she'd found a quote worth using. "That's good. That's really good. One more question. Clarissa's PR team is focusing heavily on your daughter, implying you're an unfit parent, that you're raising her in an unstable environment. How do you respond to that?" Evan felt rage rising again, hot and dangerous. "My daughter is the reason I get up every morning. She's the reason I left a career that paid better to work doubles as a waiter. She's the reason I show restraint even when people like Clarissa Vaughn try to provoke me into violence. Everything I do is for Lily, and anyone who suggests otherwise doesn't know the first thing about being a parent." "Lily. That's her name?" Evan immediately regretted the slip. "Don't print that. Don't make my daughter part of this story." "I won't use her name," Diana promised. "But the fact that you're a single father trying to provide for his child, that's relevant context. It explains why you stayed calm when most people would have snapped. It shows character. It shows desperation. Single parents don't have the luxury of losing our tempers." "That's also a good quote." Diana closed her notebook. "Mr. Brooks, my article is going to present you as what you are. A man who has attacked and defended himself responsibly. But you should know that Clarissa Vaughn has significant resources. She's going to come at you hard. Are you prepared for that?" "Does it matter if I am?" "No, I suppose not. But for what it's worth, I've covered her for 3 years. I've watched her destroy people for minor slights. The fact that you're still standing, still fighting for your daughter, that matters. Don't let her take that from you." She stood, collecting her things. "I'll send you a draft before it posts. If there are factual errors, let me know. But I won't change the quotes. That's editorial policy." "Fair enough." Diana started to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Off the record. I did some digging into your background. Military records are sealed above a certain classification level. I'm guessing yours fall into that category. Evan said nothing. I'm not going to push, Diana continued, because frankly it doesn't matter. Whatever you did or didn't do in the military, you're not that person now. You're a father working a crap job to support his kid. That's the story I'm telling. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive whatever she throws at you next, because this is far from over. She left, the door chiming behind her. Evan sat alone with his timeline and cooling coffee, feeling the weight of future confrontations pressing down. His phone showed 1:30. Time to gather his documents and meet the lawyer who'd agreed to defend him against an enemy with infinite resources and no conscience. He finished his coffee, closed the laptop, and headed for his car. The afternoon sun had burned away the morning clouds, leaving the day bright and cold. Somewhere across the city, Lily was in math class, learning multiplication tables, blissfully unaware that her father's entire life was being systematically disassembled by a wealthy woman who'd decided he needed to be punished for not accepting abuse quietly. Jennifer Torres's office occupied the third floor of a modest building in Midtown. The reception area was small but professionally maintained, decorated with diplomas and bar association certificates. The receptionist, a young woman with vivid purple hair, greeted Evan with unexpected warmth. "Mr. Brooks? Miss Torres is expecting you. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine, thank you." "She'll be right out. She's just finishing a call." Evan sat in the waiting area, his folder of documents feeling inadequate against the scope of what he faced. Around him, other clients waited. A nervous teenager with her mother, an older man reading legal papers with grim concentration. People with their own crises, their own battles against systems designed to favor the powerful. Jennifer Torres emerged from her office exactly at 2. She was younger than Evan expected, mid-30s, dressed in a sharp suit, her dark hair pulled into a professional bun. But her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct. "Mr. Brooks, come in." Her office was organized chaos, file boxes stacked along one wall, a whiteboard covered in legal notes, certificates and awards competing for wall space. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Let's get right to it. I've reviewed the witness statements Raphael sent me, watched Richard Holbrook's video 3 times, and read Clarissa Vaughn's police report. Her allegations are bullshit, but that doesn't mean they're not dangerous." Jennifer opened a file on her desk. "Tell me about your daughter. Full custody?" "Yes. Her mother died 3 years ago. Overdose." "I'm sorry. Any other family with custody claims? Grandparents? Aunts? Uncles?" "Sarah's parents are dead. Her sister lives in Oregon, but has never shown interest in custody. My parents are deceased. I'm it." "Good. One less complication." Jennifer made notes. "CPS will interview you within 48 hours. They'll ask about your employment, your living situation, your ability to provide for Lily. They'll ask about last night's incident. The key is to be honest, but not defensive. Answer their questions directly without over-explaining." "What are they looking for?" "Indicators of instability. Signs that you might be violent or neglectful. Evidence that Lily is in danger." Jennifer looked up from her notes. "They won't find any of that because it doesn't exist, but Clarissa's allegations mean they have to look. The best thing you can do is cooperate fully, show them your home, let them talk to Lily's teachers. Be completely transparent." "What if they dig into my military service?" Jennifer's expression sharpened. "What would they find?" "Nothing. The records are sealed." "Why are they sealed?" "Because the work I did was classified." "How classified?" "Classified enough that it doesn't officially exist." Jennifer leaned back, studying him. "Mr. Brooks, if you were involved in Black Ops or something similar, you need to tell me now. Not details. I don't need operational specifics. But I need to know if there's anything in your past that could be used against you." "There isn't. My service was exemplary. My discharge was honorable. And everything I did was legal under the circumstances." "All true, if carefully framed." "Under the circumstances," Jennifer repeated. "That's an interesting phrase." "It's the only phrase I can use." She nodded slowly. "Fine. We'll work with what we've got. But understand that if something surfaces that you haven't told me about, I can't help you defend against it. I understand. Good. Jennifer pulled out a fresh legal pad. Now walk me through last night. Every detail you remember. Start with when you first approached table 14. For the next hour, Evan recounted the evening, pausing frequently while Jennifer asked clarifying questions. What was Clarissa's demeanor when he first approached? How many drinks had she consumed? What exactly did she say about Lily? When she grabbed his wrist, how hard did she grip? When her hand came toward his face, what was his thought process in responding? I didn't think, Evan admitted. I just reacted. Training takes over in situations like that. What kind of training produces that level of reaction? The kind designed to neutralize threats without escalating violence. Military training. Yes. The kind of military training that gets heavily classified. Yes. Jennifer set down her pen. Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be honest with you. Your background is both your greatest asset and your greatest liability. On one hand, it explains your restraint. You knew exactly how to stop Clarissa without harming her, and you chose the minimal force option. That's admirable. On the other hand, Clarissa's team is going to paint you as a trained killer who had no business working in public spaces. They're going to argue that you're dangerous by nature. I'm dangerous to people who attack others. That's not the same thing. I know, but juries and CPS investigators don't always distinguish between capacity for violence and propensity toward violence. We need to make that distinction crystal clear. How? Character witnesses, people who can testify to your nature, your relationship with Lily, your history of restraint, teachers who've interacted with you at parent conferences, neighbors who see you with your daughter, colleagues who've worked alongside you. Jennifer began making a list. I'll need names and contact information. The more people who can vouch for you, the harder it is for Clarissa to paint you as unstable. Evan provided names. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched Lily occasionally, Marcus from Bellamy's, Amy. Jennifer wrote quickly, already planning her strategy. One more thing, she said. Diana Chen contacted me this morning. She wanted to know if I'd comment on your case. I declined, but her article is going live in about 20 minutes. Have you talked to her? Briefly, this morning. What did you tell her? The truth, that I defended myself, that everything I do is for my daughter. Jennifer nodded approvingly. Good. Stick to that narrative. You're not a victim looking for sympathy. You're a father who responded appropriately to aggression and is now being punished for it. That resonates with people. Her phone chimed. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting. It's live. Diana's article. She turned her computer monitor so Evan could see. The headline read, Waiter attacked by wealthy investor faces retaliation for defending himself. Below it, Diana's article laid out the facts with devastating clarity. Witness statements painted Clarissa as drunk, aggressive, personally vindictive. Richard Holbrook was quoted extensively, describing her behavior as unconscionable and Evan's response as remarkably restrained. The article included stills from the video, Clarissa grabbing Evan's wrist, her hand raised toward his face, Evan's controlled defensive movement. And there, midway through, was Evan's quote, Because violence doesn't solve problems, it just creates new ones. Because I'm a father, and I want my daughter to learn that strength means protecting, not dominating. The comments section was already flooding with responses, thousands of them, the number climbing as they watched. The tide had turned sharply against Clarissa. Jennifer smiled for the first time since Evan had met her. This is good. This is very good. Public opinion won't decide the CPS case, but it will make it much harder for Clarissa to control the narrative. She closed the browser. Now comes the hard part. Waiting. CPS will contact you soon. Until then, go home. Be with your daughter. And try not to worry. Try not to worry, Evan repeated. That's like trying not to breathe. I know. But you're not alone in this fight, Mr. Brooks. Richard Holbrook has resources and motivation. I've got experience and determination. And you've got the truth on your side. That matters more than you might think. Evan stood gathering his documents. Thank you, Ms. Torres. Jennifer, and don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over and your daughter is still with you. He left her office as afternoon shadows lengthened across the city. His phone showed a text from Amy. Lily's home. We're making cookies. Take your time. Take your time. As if time wasn't the one resource he couldn't afford to waste, the one commodity Clarissa Vaughn was systematically stealing from him. Evan drove home through traffic that felt like metaphor. Everyone moving forward, everyone trapped, everyone pretending they had control over their destination. When he finally pulled into his driveway, the house lights were on, warm against the gathering dusk. Inside, he found Lily and Amy in the kitchen, surrounded by the chaos of baking. Flour dusted the counter, chocolate chips scattered like confetti, mixing bowls piled in the sink. Lily's face lit up when she saw him. "Daddy, we made snickerdoodles." "I can see that." Evan crossed the kitchen, pulling her into a hug. She smelled like cinnamon and sugar and everything good in the world. Amy met his eyes over Lily's head, her expression asking questions she couldn't voice in front of the child. Evan shook his head slightly. "Not now, not yet." "How was school, Pumpkin?" "Good. I got 100% on my multiplication test. And Tommy threw up during lunch, and Mrs. Patterson said I could be line leader tomorrow." The mundane details of childhood, each one precious because it represented normalcy, because it represented a life Evan was fighting desperately to preserve. They ate cookies warm from the oven, drank milk, talked about nothing important. When Lily retreated to her room to work on homework, Amy finally asked the question Evan had been dreading. "How bad is it?" "CPS is opening an investigation. Clarissa filed a police report. I've got a lawyer, but we're playing defense against someone with unlimited resources." "Jesus." Amy's hands tightened around her mug. "What can I do?" "If CPS contacts you, tell them the truth. That I'm a good father. That Lily's happy, safe, well cared for. That's easy. It's all true." "I know, but they're going to try to twist things. Look for cracks, inconsistencies, anything that suggests I'm unstable." "You're not unstable. You're the most stable person I know." Amy's voice carried fierce certainty. "You work yourself to exhaustion for that little girl. You've built a whole life around making sure she has everything she needs. If they can't see that, they're blind. Blind or bought. Clarissa's got money to make people see what she wants them to see." They sat in the warm kitchen, the weight of future battles pressing down. Upstairs, Lily's voice drifted down as she sang to herself, working on homework, innocent of the storm gathering around her. Evan's phone buzzed, an email notification. He opened it reluctantly, expecting another reporter or another threat. Instead, he found a message from an address labeled simply JH. The text was brief. "Mr. Brooks, I meant what I said in my statement to the police. You showed remarkable restraint in an impossible situation. If you need anything, legal support, character witness, financial assistance, you have my number. Don't let her win. Richard Holbrook." Evan stared at the message, feeling something loosen in his chest. He wasn't alone. Jennifer had said it, but now he felt it. The truth that even against enormous power, even against systematic cruelty, solidarity existed. People who saw injustice and chose to stand against it. "Good news?" Amy asked. "Complicated news, but yeah, good." His phone rang. Unknown number. Evan answered anyway, too tired to be cautious. "Mr. Brooks? This is Sarah Winters from Child Protective Services. I'm the caseworker assigned to your file. I'd like to schedule a home visit for tomorrow afternoon if possible." Tomorrow? So soon? "What time? Would 3 o'clock work?" "Yes." "Good. I'll need to inspect your home, talk with you about your situation, and briefly speak with your daughter if she's available. The interview should take about an hour." "I understand. Mr. Brooks, I want you to know that this is standard procedure. We take all allegations seriously, but that doesn't mean we've made any judgments. Our job is to ensure children's safety. Nothing more, nothing less." "I understand," Evan repeated. "See you tomorrow at 3. She disconnected. Evan looked at Amy, feeling the full weight of everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. "CPS comes tomorrow," he said quietly. Amy moved around the table, wrapping him in a hug. "Then tomorrow we show them the truth. That Lily has a father who loves her more than anything in the world. That she's safe, happy, thriving, That Clarissa Vaughn is full of shit. Evan laughed despite everything, the sound surprising him. Tell me how you really feel. I feel like you've been backed into a corner by someone who needs to learn that money doesn't make you invincible. And I feel like she picked the wrong guy to mess with. Amy pulled back, her expression fierce. You're going to win this, Evan, because you have to, because Lily needs you, and because that little girl upstairs deserves to keep her father. Upstairs, as if summoned by the mention of her name, Lily called out, Daddy, can you help me with this math problem? Be right there, pumpkin. He climbed the stairs toward his daughter's room, toward the ordinary crisis of homework, toward the small battles that made up the war of parenting. Tomorrow would bring investigators, questions, scrutiny, but tonight he was just a father helping with math, reading bedtime stories, tucking his daughter safely into sleep. And somehow, despite everything, that would have to be enough. The morning of the CPS visit arrived with the slow dread of a dentist appointment. Evan had been awake since 5, moving through the house with methodical precision, seeing it through the eyes of a stranger who held his daughter's future in their hands. The dishes were washed and put away. The floors were swept clean. Lily's school papers covered the refrigerator in an organized chaos that spoke of engaged parenting rather than neglect. Her shoes sat neatly by the door, her backpack hanging on its designated hook. Everything was in order. Everything had always been in order. But now it needed to appear that way to someone trained to find cracks in facades, to spot the warning signs that separated adequate parenting from dangerous inadequacy. Evan sent Lily to school with extra care that morning, triple-checking that she had her lunch, her homework, her permission slip for the upcoming field trip. She'd sensed his tension, responding with the careful kindness that children sometimes showed when they intuited their parents' distress without understanding its source. "You okay, Daddy?" she'd asked at breakfast, her spoon pausing halfway to her mouth. "Just tired, pumpkin. Lots on my mind." "Grown-up stuff?" "Yeah, grown-up stuff." She'd accepted this because 7-year-olds still believed that grown-up stuff existed in a separate realm that didn't touch their world. Evan hoped desperately that this particular grown-up stuff would stay contained, that Lily would never have to understand how close she'd come to being weaponized in someone else's vendetta. After dropping her at school, Evan returned home to wait. Jennifer had coached him on the interview. Be honest, be direct, don't volunteer information beyond what's asked, show confidence without defensiveness. He'd practiced responses to likely questions, trying to find the balance between transparency and self-protection. The hours crawled. At noon, Evan forced himself to eat something, knowing he'd need the energy for whatever came next. At 1, he showered and changed into clean clothes. Nothing too formal, nothing that looked like he was trying too hard. At 2, he sat at the kitchen table with his folder of documents, organized and ready. At 2:45, a nondescript sedan pulled into his driveway. Sarah Winters emerged carrying a leather portfolio and wearing an expression of professional neutrality. She was perhaps 50, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and the kind of face that had seen too much to be easily shocked. Evan met her at the door before she could knock. "Ms. Winters, come in." "Thank you, Mr. Brooks." She stepped inside, her eyes already scanning the space with trained assessment. "I appreciate you making time on short notice." "Of course. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine, thank you." She moved into the living room, taking in the worn but clean furniture, the bookshelves, lined with a mix of children's books and adult fiction, the photos of Lily scattered across every available surface. "This is a nice home. How long have you lived here?" 2 years, since Lily was 5. "You rent?" "Yes. Month to month originally, but we signed a year lease 6 months ago." Sarah made notes on a tablet. "And you work at Bellamy's restaurant?" "I did. My employment status is currently uncertain due to the incident that triggered this investigation." "Let's talk about that incident." Sarah sat on the couch, gesturing for Evan to take the chair across from her. "I've read the police report filed by Clarissa Vaughn. I've also read witness statements and watched video footage that tells a very different story. I'd like to hear your version." Evan walked her through it, using the timeline he'd perfected with Jennifer. The facts remained simple, even as the emotional weight was impossible to fully convey. Sarah listened without interrupting, her stylus moving across the tablet screen. "And when she attempted to strike you," Sarah said when he finished, "your response was to restrain her arms. Nothing more." Correct. I controlled the threat without causing injury, then released her and walked away. The witnesses described your movements as professional and precise. Do you have training in physical restraint? Here was the question Evan had been preparing for. I served in the Army for 4 years. After that, I worked private security for 6 years. Part of that job involved training in threat assessment and nonviolent restraint techniques. But you left security work. When my daughter was born, yes, my partner at the time had substance abuse issues. I needed a job with stable hours and no travel so I could be present for Lily. Your partner, Lily's mother. Sarah, yes. She died 3 years ago. I'm sorry. The words carried genuine sympathy. That must have been difficult for both of you. It was, but we've built a good life together since then. Lily's thriving. You can check with her school, with her teachers, with anyone who knows us. I will. Sarah made more notes. Mr. Brooks, I need to ask you directly. Have you ever been violent with your daughter? Ever struck her in anger, restrained her inappropriately, caused her to fear you? Never. The word came out harder than Evan intended. I've raised my voice when necessary. I've sent her to her room for misbehaving, but I've never and would never hurt my child. Has anyone ever expressed concerns about your parenting? No. If anything, people comment on how well-adjusted Lily is, how polite, how confident. I'd like to meet her, Sarah said. Would it be possible to pick her up from school together? I find children are more comfortable with these conversations when they happen in familiar settings with their parents present. Of course, school lets out at 3:30. Sarah glanced at her watch. Then we have some time. Why don't you show me the rest of the house? The tour felt invasive and necessary in equal measure. Sarah inspected Lily's bedroom with particular care. The twin bed made neatly, the stuffed animals arranged on the shelf, the closet full of clothes that fit properly and showed no signs of neglect. She checked the bathroom for basic supplies, the kitchen for adequate food, the smoke detectors for functionality. You keep a clean home, Sarah observed, her tone neutral. Some single parents struggle with maintaining order while working full-time. I work doubles most weeks, Evan said. But Lily comes first, always. The house stays clean because we do it together. She's got chores appropriate for her age. It teaches responsibility. What kind of chores? She sets the table for dinner, feeds her goldfish, keeps her room picked up. Nothing excessive. Sarah nodded, making notes. And childcare while you work? My friend Amy watches her. She's studying to be a nurse. Lily adores her. I'll need to speak with Amy as well. Can you provide her contact information? Evan recited Amy's number, which Sarah entered into her tablet. The inspection continued. The garage where Evan's tools hung organized on pegboards. The small backyard where Lily's bicycle leaned against the fence. Every space revealing the careful construction of a life built around a child's needs. Finally, they returned to the living room. Sarah settled back onto the couch, her expression thoughtful. Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be frank with you. The allegations in Ms. Vaughn's report don't match what I'm seeing here. She's painted you as unstable, potentially violent, possibly unfit. What I see is a man who's working hard to provide a stable home for his daughter. She paused. But I still need to complete my investigation. That means talking to Lily, to her teachers, to Amy. I need to verify that what you're showing me today is consistent with how you parent every day. I understand, and you'll find it is consistent, because this isn't a performance for your benefit. This is just our life. I hope so. Because if everything checks out the way I expect it will, this case will close quickly. Sarah's voice carried a hint of something harder. And between you and me, I've dealt with Clarissa Vaughn before. 2 years ago, she filed a report claiming a parking attendant had threatened her child. Turned out she didn't have children and was simply angry about a parking ticket. The man she accused lost his job before we could clear him. Evan felt something cold settle in his stomach. She's done this before. She uses CPS as a weapon. It's not common, but it happens. People with resources who know that even unfounded allegations can destroy lives. Sarah's expression hardened. It's one of the uglier aspects of my job, but it's also why we investigate thoroughly rather than accepting reports at face value. Will she face consequences? For filing a false report? That's not my department, but I'll be documenting in my report that the allegations appear to be retaliatory rather than based in genuine concern for a child's welfare.
Sarah stood. Shall we go pick up Lily? They drove separately to Riverside Elementary, arriving just as the afternoon bell rang. Children poured from the building in their familiar chaos of backpacks and laughter. Evan spotted Lily immediately. She had his height and Sarah's dark coloring, a perfect genetic blend of two imperfect people. She saw him and waved, then noticed Sarah standing beside him.
Her expression shifted to curiosity mixed with caution. Hey, Pumpkin, this is Ms. Winters. She works for an organization that makes sure kids are safe and happy. She'd like to ask you a few questions if that's okay. Lily looked at Sarah with the careful assessment children employed when meeting new adults. What kind of questions? Just about your life, Sarah said, her voice warming in a way it hadn't during the house inspection. About school and home and the things you like to do. Nothing scary, I promise. Okay. Lily took Evan's hand, anchoring herself to the familiar. Can Daddy stay with me? Absolutely. How about we go to that park across the street? I see it has swings. The three of them crossed to the small park that bordered the school, finding a bench near the playground equipment. Lily sat between Evan and Sarah, her legs swinging above the ground. So Lily, Sarah began, tell me about your favorite things at school. Reading and art and recess. Lily warmed to the topic, the way she always did when discussing things she loved. We're reading Charlotte's Web in class. It's really sad, but also really good. I loved that book when I was your age. What's your favorite part? When Charlotte saves Wilbur by writing words in her web, because words can be powerful. Sarah smiled. They absolutely can. What about at home? What do you like to do with your dad? We cook together on weekends, and we go to the park sometimes, and Daddy helps me practice my dance routines for my recital. You dance? Ballet. I'm going to be a snowflake in the Nutcracker, pride-filled Lily's voice. Daddy says I'm the best snowflake he's ever seen. Because you are, Evan interjected quietly. Sarah made notes, her stylus moving across the screen. Lily, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to tell me the truth. Do you ever feel scared at home? Lily's face scrunched in confusion. Scared? Of what? Of anything. Of your dad. Of being alone. Of not having what you need. No. The word came out definitively. Daddy takes care of me. He makes sure I eat vegetables even when I don't want to. He checks my homework. He tucks me in at night and reads me stories. Sometimes he's tired because he works a lot, but he's never scary. Has he ever hit you or hurt you? No, Daddy would never hurt me. He says hitting is never okay, that we use words to solve problems. That's very good advice. Sarah's expression had softened further. One more question. If you could change anything about your life, what would it be? Lily thought about this seriously. I wish Daddy didn't have to work so much, and I wish Mom was still alive so I could remember her better. But mostly things are good. Daddy says we have everything important even if we don't have everything we want. Sarah closed her tablet, her assessment clearly complete. Thank you, Lily. You've been very helpful. Did I do okay? Lily looked between Sarah and Evan, seeking reassurance. You did perfectly, Sarah assured her. You're a smart, thoughtful young lady. Lily beamed at the praise. Evan felt his chest tighten with pride and fear in equal measure. Pride in his daughter's resilience, fear that even her obvious well-being might not be enough against Clarissa's resources. Sarah stood, gesturing for Evan to step aside for a private word. Lily headed for the swings, giving them space. Mr. Brooks, I've seen enough. This case is going to close with a finding of unfounded allegations. I'll interview Amy and Lily's teacher to complete my documentation, but unless something dramatic changes, you have nothing to worry about from CPS. Relief crashed over Evan like a wave. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm just doing my job. But I will include in my report that these allegations appear to be retaliatory and made in bad faith. Sarah's voice hardened. And I'll be recommending that if Ms. Vaughn files another report with my agency, it should be subject to additional scrutiny given this pattern of behavior. Will that actually stop her from using CPS as a weapon? Probably not, but it might make the next investigator more skeptical of her claims. Sarah handed Evan her card. If you have any concerns or if anything changes, contact me directly. Otherwise, expect a formal letter within 2 weeks closing the case.
They shook hands. Sarah headed for her car, while Evan joined Lily at the swings, pushing her higher as she shrieked with delight. For the first time in 48 hours, he felt something like hope. That evening, Jennifer called with more news. The police have closed their investigation. Richard's video combined with witness statements made it clear you acted in self-defense. They're not pressing charges. What about Clarissa's report? Still on file, but effectively meaningless without charges. She can try to leverage it in a civil suit, but any halfway competent attorney will tear it apart. Jennifer's satisfaction was audible. Evan, you're winning. It doesn't feel like it yet, but you're winning. She's not done, Evan said quietly. People like her don't stop because they lost the first round. You're probably right, but every victory makes the next fight easier. CPS found nothing. The police found nothing. Public opinion is on your side. She's running out of weapons. She still has money. Money's not everything. Ask Richard Holbrook. He's got plenty of it, and he's using it to make sure Clarissa can't buy her way out of consequences. After disconnecting, Evan found himself standing at his kitchen window, watching Lily play in the backyard with Amy, their laughter carrying through the glass. This was what he'd been fighting for. Not vindication or victory, but the simple continuation of ordinary moments, a child playing, a friend helping, a life continuing without interruption. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've made a powerful enemy. Enjoy your small victories while they last. Evan stared at the message, feeling the cold certainty of future confrontations. He deleted it without responding, refusing to give Clarissa the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under his skin. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Evan's phone rang while he was making Lily's breakfast, the number identified as Bellamy's. Evan, it's Raphael. Can you come in this afternoon? 2 o'clock? Am I being fired? Just come in. 2 o'clock. The tone was impossible to read. Evan agreed and spent the morning alternating between hope and dread. At 1:30, he drove to Bellamy's for the second time that week, entering through the employee entrance like always. Raphael waited in his office, but he wasn't alone. Richard Holbrook sat in the guest chair, his expensive suit somehow making Raphael's small office look even smaller. Evan? Richard stood, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Mr. Holbrook. Evan shook, confused. I wasn't expecting you. Call me Richard, and I know this is unusual, but I wanted to talk to you directly. He gestured to the empty chair. Please, sit. Evan sat, looking between the two men. What's this about? It's about the fact that you lost your income because of Clarissa Vaughn's vindictiveness, Richard said bluntly, and about the fact that I have both the resources and the motivation to make that right. I don't want charity. Good, because I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job. Richard leaned forward. I need a head of security for my company, someone who understands threat assessment, who can train staff on de-escalation, who knows how to protect people without creating liability. Someone exactly like you. Evan felt his pulse quicken. I left security work. I told you. You left executive protection work that required travel and irregular hours. This is different. This is a 9-to-5 position based in my downtown office. Training staff, reviewing security protocols, occasional personal protection when I travel, but with advance notice so you can arrange childcare. Richard pulled out a folder. The salary is $90,000 annually plus benefits, health insurance, dental, retirement matching, and a signing bonus sufficient to cover 3 months of expenses while you transition. Evan stared at the folder, not touching it. Why? Because Clarissa Vaughn has been a cancer in this city's business community for years. She's destroyed careers, ruined reputations, used her wealth to avoid consequences. Someone needs to stand up to her, and you already did. Richard's expression hardened. Also because I watched that video probably 50 times. You could have hurt her badly. You chose not to. That kind of restraint is rare and valuable. What if I say no? Then I'll respect your decision and wish you well. But Evan, think about what this means for Lily. Stable income, health insurance, a career that uses your actual skills instead of wasting them. Richard paused. And if Clarissa tries to come at you again, and she will, you'll have resources to fight back. My lawyers, my connections, my money matching hers. It was everything Marcus Webb had offered in his email,
but coming from someone Evan had reason to trust. Still, the hesitation remained, the fear that returning to anything adjacent to his old life would open doors he'd worked hard to seal. Can I think about it? Of course, but I need an answer by Monday. The position's open now, and I've got other candidates if you decline. Richard stood. One more thing. Whether you take this job or not, if Clarissa escalates her campaign against you, call me. I meant what I said. Nobody else should have to lose their livelihood because she can't handle being told no. After Richard left, Raphael slumped in his chair with visible relief. Jesus, I thought he was going to poach you permanently. He kind of did. But it's a good offer, right? Better than waiting tables? It's a great offer. That's what worries me. Why? Because great offers usually come with hidden costs. Because nothing's ever as simple as it seems. Because I've spent 8 years building a life that keeps me and Lily safe. And this feels like a door opening to things I've been trying to avoid. Raphael studied him. Or maybe it's an opportunity to stop hiding, to use the skills you actually have instead of pretending you're someone you're not. I'm not pretending. I am a father. I am a man trying to build a quiet life. But you're also someone who can stop a threat without breaking a sweat. Someone trained to protect people. Why is it wrong to do that professionally instead of just when someone attacks you? The question hung in the air. Evan didn't have a good answer. He drove home with Richard's offer folder on the passenger seat, its weight somehow heavier than mere paper should be. The salary alone would transform their lives. No more doubles. No more calculating which bills to pay first. No more telling Lily they couldn't afford things other kids took for granted. But it also meant returning to proximity with violence, even controlled violence. It meant being someone Lily might eventually ask questions about. It meant accepting that the version of himself he'd tried to leave behind was actually still there, waiting. At home, Amy was watching Lily as usual. She took one look at Evan's face and sent Lily upstairs to play. What happened? Evan told her about Richard's offer, about the salary, the benefits, the resources to fight Clarissa if necessary, about his hesitation to accept. Amy listened, then said something unexpected. Take it. You think I should? I think you've been punishing yourself for 8 years for having skills most people would kill for. You've been working jobs that pay you a fraction of what you're worth because you thought that's what being a good father meant. But Evan, you can be a good father and also be yourself. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. What if being myself means becoming someone Lily shouldn't be around? That's bullshit and you know it. Amy's voice was sharp. You're not violent. You're controlled. You're the guy who stopped someone from hitting him without hurting them back. That's exactly who Lily should be around. Someone who knows their own strength and chooses not to abuse it. It's not that simple. It never is. But Evan, this offer solves real problems. Money problems. Career problems. Protection problems if Clarissa keeps coming after you. Amy gripped his shoulders. Stop overthinking it. Call Richard tomorrow and say yes. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat in the dark living room with Richard's folder open on his lap. The contract was straightforward, the salary real, the benefits comprehensive. It was everything he needed and nothing he'd asked for. His phone buzzed, an email from Jennifer. Sarah Winters submitted her report, case officially closed. Congratulations, you and Lily are in the clear. Another email, this time from Diana Chen. Update on Clarissa's situation. Call when you can. Evan called. Diana answered immediately. Mr. Brooks, I wanted to give you a heads up before it hits the news tomorrow. Clarissa Vaughn has been fired from her investment firm. What? The board decided her public behavior represented a liability to the firm's reputation. Between the videos, the witness statements, and the failed CPS investigation that's now public record, they couldn't justify keeping her. Diana's satisfaction was evident. She's threatening to sue, but her lawyers are apparently advising her to take the severance package and disappear quietly. Is it over then? Maybe. Probably. People like Clarissa don't usually accept defeat gracefully, but she's also running out of ammunition. You survived her best shots. After hanging up, Evan sat in the darkness, processing. Clarissa was gone from her firm. CPS had closed the investigation. The police had declined to press charges. Public opinion had turned decisively against her. He'd won. Against all odds, against an opponent with vastly superior resources.
He'd simply endured until she'd destroyed herself through overreach. And now he had a choice. Stay safe, stay small, continue building the quiet life he'd constructed, or accept Richard's offer, step into a larger role, become someone who didn't just survive conflict, but prevented it. Upstairs, Lily coughed in her sleep. The small sound carried through the quiet house, a reminder of why any of this mattered. She was the reason he'd left his old life. She was the reason he'd endured Clarissa's attacks. She was the reason he did everything. But Amy was right. Being a good father didn't mean making himself smaller. It meant being strong enough to protect, wise enough to choose peace, and capable enough to handle whatever came next. Evan pulled out his phone and typed an email to Richard. I accept your offer. When do I start? The response came within minutes. Monday. Welcome aboard. Evan closed his laptop and headed upstairs. In her room, Lily slept peacefully, her stuffed elephant clutched close, her breathing even and calm. She was safe. They both were. And tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, this was enough. He stood in her doorway, watching her sleep, feeling the weight of the past few days finally beginning to lift. They'd survived. They'd won. And somehow, impossibly, life was about to get better. Tomorrow he'd tell Lily about the new job. Tomorrow he'd start planning his transition. Tomorrow he'd begin the next chapter of their lives. But tonight, he was just a father watching his daughter sleep, grateful beyond words that she was still his, that they were still together, that Clarissa Vaughn's cruelty hadn't managed to destroy what mattered most. In the morning, everything would be different. But different, for once, meant better. The weekend passed in a strange suspension between old life and new. Evan told Lily about the job change over Saturday morning pancakes, watching her face light up with the uncomplicated joy that children brought to good news. Does this mean you won't have to work at night anymore? She asked, syrup dripping from her fork. Most nights, yeah. I'll be home for dinner, home to help with homework, home for bedtime stories. Every night? The hope in her voice nearly broke him. Most nights. Sometimes I might have to travel with Mr. Holbrook, but he promised to give me lots of warning so Amy can stay with you. Lily considered this, her 7-year-old mind processing the implications. Will you be happier? The question caught Evan off guard. What do you mean, Pumpkin? At your old job, you always looked tired. Really tired. Like the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. She said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. Will this job make you less tired? Evan reached across the table, taking her small hand in his. I think it might, because I'll be doing work that uses my brain more, and I'll get to spend more time with you. That's the most important part. She squeezed his hand, satisfied. Good, because you're my favorite person, and I like it when you're happy. Later that afternoon, while Lily was at a birthday party, Evan met Jennifer at a coffee shop to discuss the final legal loose ends. She arrived with a thick folder and an expression that suggested both relief and residual concern. The good news is that everything's resolving in your favor, she said, spreading documents across the table. CPS case closed with a finding of unfounded allegations. Police investigation concluded with no charges. Clarissa's employment terminated. Her civil lawsuit threats haven't materialized, probably because her lawyers told her she'd lose spectacularly. And the bad news? The bad news is that Clarissa Vaughn hasn't made any public statements. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no acceptance of consequences. She's just gone silent. Jennifer's expression darkened. In my experience, that either means she's accepted defeat or she's regrouping. I'm not sure which is more likely. You think she'll come back at me? I think wealthy people don't like losing, especially to people they consider beneath them. But she's also smart enough to recognize when she's backed into a corner. Every move she's made has blown up in her face. Continuing the fight would just mean more public humiliation. Jennifer paused. That said, keep documentation of everything. Every email, every text, every interaction. If she does resurface, we need a paper trail. Richard said the same thing. He's having his legal team monitor for any activity from her. Richard Holbrook is a good ally to have. I've worked with his firm before. They're thorough and they don't back down. Jennifer closed her folder. Evan, you should be proud of yourself. Most people in your situation would have either folded under pressure or responded with the kind of violence that would have proved Clarissa right. You did neither. You just stood your ground and let the truth do the work. I had help. You, Richard, Raphael, Amy. I didn't do this alone. No one ever does. But you were the one standing in that dining room when Clarissa attacked. You were the one who chose restraint over retaliation. That was all you. They finished their coffee, and Jennifer promised to send final paperwork for Evan's records. Walking to his car, Evan felt the strange lightness of a burden lifted. Not entirely gone, but no longer pressing down with the same suffocating weight. Sunday evening brought one final surprise. Evan's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize but that registered as local. He answered cautiously. Mr. Brooks, this is Michelle Ortiz. We met briefly at Bellamy's. I was having dinner with Clarissa that night. The woman in emerald silk who'd tried to intervene. I remember. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize for not speaking up more forcefully, for not stopping her before things escalated. Michelle's voice carried genuine regret. I've known Clarissa for 10 years. I've watched her bully waiters, assistants, anyone she considered beneath her notice. I told myself it wasn't my business, that she'd eventually face consequences. I was wrong. I should have intervened long before she got to you. You did give a statement to the police. That helped. It was the least I could do. But Mr. Brooks, I'm calling for another reason. I work in HR for a tech company downtown. We're always looking for security consultants, especially ones with your background. If things don't work out with Richard Holbrook, or if you want additional consulting work, I'd like to put you in touch with our VP of Operations. Evan absorbed this, recognizing the gesture for what it was. Not just a job offer, but an act of restitution. Thank you. I appreciate that. You showed remarkable grace under circumstances that would have made most people violent. That's rare. That's valuable. Michelle paused. Also, for what it's worth, Clarissa's been cut off from our social circle. None of us want to associate with someone who weaponizes CPS against a single father. What she did was unconscionable. After they hung up, Evan sat with his phone, processing this unexpected development. The circle that had witnessed his humiliation was now actively distancing itself from his attacker. Justice, in its own strange way, was being served. Monday morning arrived with the crisp inevitability of new beginnings. Evan dropped Lily at school, then drove downtown to Richard Holbrook's office building, a gleaming tower of steel and glass that represented a world he'd deliberately avoided for years. The security desk issued him a temporary badge, and he rode the elevator to the 23rd floor, watching the city shrink beneath him. Richard's assistant, an efficient young man named Marcus, met him at reception. Mr. Brooks, welcome. Richard's in a meeting for another 20 minutes, but he asked me to get you started with onboarding paperwork. The next hour disappeared in a blur of forms, tax documents, emergency contacts, benefits enrollment, security clearances. Evan worked through them methodically, his handwriting neat, his answers complete. This was the bureaucratic price of legitimacy, the paper trail that transformed him from invisible service worker to documented professional. Richard appeared at 10, his handshake firm. Evan, good to see you. Ready for the tour? The office complex sprawled across 2 floors, executive offices, conference rooms, a security operations center that monitored Richard's various properties and business interests. The security team consisted of 5 people, most of them former military or law enforcement, all of them regarding Evan with the careful assessment of professionals evaluating a new colleague. This is Marcus Webb, Richard said, introducing Evan to a man in his 50s with the kind of weathered face that spoke of years spent in difficult places. He runs day-to-day operations. You'll report to him for the first month while you learn our protocols. Marcus's handshake was testing, his grip designed to communicate strength. Evan matched it without escalating, old instincts reading the dominance display for what it was. Heard a lot about you, Marcus said, his voice carrying the flat accent of rural somewhere. That video from Bellamy's made the rounds. Impressive control. Just basic restraint technique. Basic. Marcus's smile suggested he knew better. We'll see how basic when I observe your training methods. Richard says you're going to revamp our de-escalation protocols. If they need revamping, they do. Half our guys are ex-cops who think compliance comes from volume and intimidation. I've been trying to teach them there's other ways, but I'm old school.
Maybe you'll have better luck. The rest of Monday dissolved in orientations and introductions. Evan met the full security team, toured Richard's primary residence to understand the protection requirements, reviewed incident reports from the past year. By 5 o'clock, his brain was saturated with information, his body humming with the unfamiliar energy of mental rather than physical exhaustion. He picked up Lily from Amy's, listening to her chatter about school, about her friends, about the spelling test she'd aced. At home, they made dinner together, pasta with marinara, garlic bread salad, and ate at the kitchen table like they always did. But something had shifted. Evan wasn't mentally calculating how many hours until his next shift, wasn't checking his phone for schedule changes, wasn't carrying the perpetual low-grade anxiety of paycheck-to-paycheck survival. "You look different, Daddy," Lily observed over dessert. "Different how?" "Less tired. Like you're really here instead of thinking about work." She was right. He was present in a way he hadn't been in years, his attention not fragmented by worry, his energy not depleted by double shifts. This was what financial security felt like, not wealth, but simply enough breathing room that survival didn't consume everything. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, reviewing the security protocols Marcus had sent. They were comprehensive but outdated, focused on physical presence rather than threat prevention, on response rather than de-escalation. He could improve them, would improve them. For the first time in nearly a decade, he'd be using the skills he'd actually trained for rather than pretending they didn't exist. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the new position. I hope you enjoy it while it lasts." Evan stared at the message, ice forming in his chest. Clarissa. It had to be. The phrasing carried her particular brand of malice, the promise of future retaliation wrapped in superficial civility. He screenshot the message and forwarded it to Jennifer with a brief explanation. Her response came within minutes. "Document everything. Don't respond. If she contacts you again, we pursue a restraining order." Evan deleted the original message, but the unease remained. Jennifer had been right. Clarissa's silence hadn't meant acceptance. It had meant planning. The next 2 weeks established new rhythms. Evan worked 9 to 5 at Richard's Security Operations Center, developing updated training materials, observing the existing team, identifying gaps in their protocols. He picked Lily up from school every day, helped with homework, made dinner, read bedtime stories. On weekends, they went to the park, baked cookies, practiced her dance routines for the recital. Life acquired a normalcy that felt both familiar and foreign. Familiar because this was what he'd always wanted, foreign because he'd spent so long believing it was unattainable. The security team gradually warmed to him. Marcus proved to be an ally, backing Evan's protocol changes even when they challenged established practices. The younger team members responded well to his training methods, which emphasized awareness and communication over physical presence. The older ex-cops took longer to convince, but even they couldn't argue with results when role-playing scenarios demonstrated the effectiveness of de-escalation. On Thursday of his second week, Richard called Evan into his office. "I'm flying to Seattle tomorrow for a series of investor meetings. I'd like you to come as my primary security." Evan felt his stomach tighten. "I'll need to arrange childcare. You mentioned you'd give advance notice for travel." "I know. That's why I'm telling you now instead of tomorrow morning." Richard's expression was apologetic. "I realize this is short notice, but the meetings just got confirmed. We'd leave Friday afternoon, return Sunday evening. Can Amy stay with Lily?" "I'll have to ask her." "Do that. If it doesn't work, I'll take Marcus instead. But Evan, I'd prefer you. These meetings involve some potentially hostile parties. I want someone who can read situations and keep them from escalating." Amy agreed to stay with Lily, though Evan could hear the concern in her voice when he called. "This is what the job is, right? Travel, protection work?" "Sometimes. Not often, according to Richard." "And you're okay with it? With getting back into that world?" "I'm accompanying a businessman to investor meetings. It's not exactly high risk. But it's still the kind of work that—" Amy trailed off, searching for words. "Just be careful, okay? You've built something good here. Don't let the old life pull you back in." Friday afternoon, Evan kissed Lily goodbye, promised to bring her a present from Seattle, and met Richard at a private airfield where a corporate jet waited. The flight was smooth, the accommodations first class. Richard worked on his laptop while Evan reviewed briefing materials on the people they'd be meeting. Investors from 3 different firms, each with their own agendas and histories with Richard's company. Seattle arrived cold and drizzling. A car service transported them to a downtown hotel where Richard had reserved a suite. Evan took the adjoining room, his security instincts already cataloging exits, sight lines, potential vulnerabilities. "First meeting's at 8 tomorrow morning," Richard said over room service dinner. "Breakfast with Charles Donovan from Cascade Capital. He's generally friendly, but likes to test people's resolve. Expect pointed questions." "What's my role?" "Observe. If you see anything that concerns you, let me know. But mostly you're there as professional presence. These guys are used to executives who travel with security. It signals success." The next morning, Evan wore the suit Richard's assistant had ordered for him. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, transforming him from working-class single father into something that could stand beside wealth without looking out of place. He accompanied Richard to the breakfast meeting, positioning himself at a table near enough to intervene if necessary, far enough to provide privacy. Charles Donovan arrived 15 minutes late, a power play designed to establish dominance. He was mid-60s, expensively dressed, carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling rooms. His eyes swept past Evan dismissively before focusing on Richard. "Holbrook, good to see you. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." The meeting proceeded smoothly. Donovan probed Richard's recent business decisions, particularly his termination of Clarissa Vaughn. Evan listened while pretending not to, his attention split between Richard's responses and Donovan's reactions. "That situation with Clarissa was unfortunate," Donovan said carefully. "She's been a valuable player in our community." "She attacked a service worker unprovoked and then tried to destroy his life when he defended himself," Richard replied flatly. "That's not the kind of behavior I tolerate in my organizations." "Still, the optics were difficult. Some people are wondering if you overreacted." "Some people weren't there. I was. I saw what happened. I stand by my decision." Donovan's gaze flicked to Evan, recognition dawning. "Wait, is that him? The waiter?" "Evan Brooks is my head of security," Richard corrected. "And yes, he's the man Clarissa attacked. Which gives you some sense of her judgment. She chose to target someone with extensive protection training and expected him to just accept her abuse." The meeting concluded with handshakes and vague promises of future collaboration. As they left the restaurant, Richard turned to Evan. "You noticed Donovan's bodyguard?" "Table by the window, former military, probably Marines based on the bearing, watching us the entire time." "That's exactly the kind of observation I need. Donovan's testing the waters, trying to determine if supporting Clarissa against me is worth the political capital. Having you there sent a message. I protect my people, even when they're targeted by his allies." The weekend continued with similar meetings, some friendly, some tense, all of them performances where subtext mattered more than actual dialogue. Evan observed, cataloged, occasionally offered brief assessments when Richard asked. By Sunday afternoon, flying back to the city, he felt exhausted in a new way, mentally rather than physically drained, his social battery depleted by hours of careful attention to dangerous egos. "You did well," Richard said during the flight. "Marcus was right about you. You rid situations like someone who's been in actual danger, not just training scenarios." "I've been in actual danger." "I know. I had my people look into your background more thoroughly after I hired you." Richard's voice carried no apology. "Most of it's sealed, but there's enough breadcrumbs to paint a picture. Special operations, probably Tier 1 assets, the kind of work that doesn't make it into official records." Evan felt his jaw tighten. And nothing. What you did before doesn't concern me unless it affects your ability to do this job. From what I've seen, it only enhances it." Richard closed his laptop. "But I need to ask you something directly. If this job ever puts you in a position where you have to use those skills, really use them, not just the restraint techniques, are you prepared to do that?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Evan thought about Lily, about the life he'd built, about the promises he'd made to himself when he'd left the military. "I'm prepared to protect people who need protecting," he said finally. "That's what I've always done. But I'm not looking for excuses to be violent. If there's a way to resolve situations without force, I'll find it. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Richard opened his laptop again. Because the world has enough people who solve problems with violence. It needs more people who prevent violence from becoming necessary. They landed as evening shadows stretched across the city. Evan drove straight home, finding Lily and Amy building a blanket fort in the living room. His daughter launched herself at him with such force he nearly stumbled. "Daddy, you're home! Did you bring me a present?" He produced a small box from his bag, a silver bracelet with a tiny dancer charm. Lily's eyes went wide with delight as she clasped it around her wrist, immediately showing Amy, immediately declaring it her new favorite thing. That night, after Lily was asleep and Amy had gone home, Evan sat in the quiet house feeling the weight of parallel lives. The father who read bedtime stories and helped with homework. The security professional who'd spent the weekend observing power dynamics and assessing threats. They were both him, both authentic, both necessary. His phone buzzed. Jennifer's name appeared on the screen. "Evan, sorry to call late. I wanted to give you a heads up. Clarissa Vaughn has hired a new law firm, Morrison and Associates. They specialize in reputation management and aggressive litigation." Meaning? Meaning she's not done. She's regrouping with better lawyers. "I don't know what her next move will be, but she's planning something." Evan looked up at the ceiling toward where Lily slept peacefully in her room. "Let her plan. I've got resources now too, and I'm not afraid of her anymore." "Good, because fear is what she feeds on. The moment you stop being afraid is the moment you become dangerous to her." Jennifer paused. "How's the new job?" "Different, good, complicated. Most good things are. Get some rest. We'll deal with Clarissa when she makes her move." After hanging up, Evan did a final check of the house. Doors locked. Windows secured. Alarm system armed. Board alarms. Old habits from a previous life, but useful in this one too. He climbed the stairs to his bedroom, passing Lily's room where nightlight cast shadows on the wall. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Next week would bring the first day of training his team on updated protocols. Next month would bring Lily's dance recital and probably some new attack from Clarissa. But tonight, his daughter slept safely. His job provided stability, and the life he'd fought so hard to protect remained intact. Wednesday of the following week brought the moment Evan had been preparing his team for. Marcus had arranged for the entire security staff to participate in a full-day training session on de-escalation and threat assessment. They gathered in the conference room at 8, 5 professionals ranging from their late 20s to early 50s, all of them carrying varying degrees of skepticism. "Most of you come from law enforcement or military backgrounds," Evan began, standing at the front of the room. "You've been trained to establish control through presence, voice, and when necessary, force. That training is valuable, but it's not always appropriate for corporate security work. So what are you suggesting?" This from Davis, one of the ex-cops, his arms crossed defensively. "That we ask nicely and hope threats go away?" "I'm suggesting that most situations never need to become threats, if you know how to read them early and redirect them effectively." Evan pulled up a slide showing a continuum from awareness to physical intervention. Force should always be the last option, not the first response. Because every time we escalate to physical force, we create liability, potential injury, and reputation damage. "Sounds great in theory," Davis muttered. "Real world's different." "Let's test that. Marcus, you and I are going to role-play a scenario. Everyone else, observe and critique." Evan gestured to Marcus. "You're an aggressive individual trying to force your way past me into a secured area. Show me how you'd normally handle this." Marcus obliged, advancing with the kind of stern commands that probably worked effectively on most people. "Sir, this area is restricted. You need to leave now." "And if I don't?" Evan played the aggressor, stepping closer, invading space. "Then I'll escort you out physically." Marcus moved to control Evan's arm. Evan demonstrated 3 ways to counter the hold without causing injury, then reset the scenario. "Now watch a different approach. Same situation, but I'm going to use positioning and communication instead of commands." This time when Marcus advanced, Evan shifted his body language, less confrontational but clearly blocking access. "Hey, I understand you're trying to get somewhere, but I've got a problem. My boss will fire me if I let anyone through here without authorization. Can you help me out by checking in at the main desk first? They'll get you cleared and then we're both good. The shift was subtle but profound. Instead of issuing commands that invited resistance, Evan had reframed the interaction as a shared problem requiring cooperation. Marcus, playing the aggressor, found himself without a clear enemy, his momentum redirected. That's manipulation, Davis objected. You're just being sneaky about control. I'm giving someone a face-saving way to comply, Evan corrected. Most people don't want conflict. They want to feel respected, heard, and like they're making their own choices. If you can provide that while still maintaining security, you avoid 90% of potential confrontations. The training continued through the morning, moving from theory to practice to increasingly complex scenarios. Gradually, Evan watched the team's skepticism transform into engagement. Even Davis participated more actively after a scenario where his usual approach resulted in a simulated physical altercation, while Evan's method achieved compliance through conversation. During lunch, Marcus pulled Evan aside. That went better than I expected. Davis has been resistant to anything that challenges his law enforcement background, but you got through to him. He just needed to see it work. Words sound like theory. Demonstrated results convince. Richard's impressed with you. He mentioned you might take on a larger role in the company if things continue going well. What kind of larger role? Director of Security Operations. Overseeing not just his personal protection, but security for all his properties and businesses. It would mean more responsibility, better salary, a team of 20 instead of 5. Evan absorbed this, feeling opportunity and obligation mixing uncomfortably. That's a significant step up. It is. But you've got the skills for it, and Richard trusts you. That matters more than credentials in this world. That evening, Evan picked up Lily from Amy's, noticing immediately that something was wrong. His daughter's usual exuberance was muted, her responses to his questions brief. Rough day at school, Pumpkin? Kind of. Want to talk about it? She stayed quiet until they were home, until Evan had made her a snack and they were sitting at the kitchen table together. Then the story emerged in the halting way of childhood hurts. Some kids were talking about you today, about what happened at your old job. Tommy's mom saw something online and told him about it, and then he told everyone. Lily's voice was small. He said you got in trouble for hurting someone, that you might be dangerous. Evan felt rage bloom hot and immediate in his chest, not at the child, but at the adults who couldn't keep their commentary from spreading to 7-year-olds. What did you say? I said it wasn't true, that you helped someone who was being mean to you, but some kids didn't believe me. Her eyes filled with tears. Am I lying, Daddy? Did you hurt someone? He pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. Listen to me, Lily. A woman at my old restaurant was drunk and mean. She grabbed me and tried to hit me. I stopped her from hitting me, but I didn't hurt her. I just held her arms so she couldn't hit me, and then I let her go and walked away. That's all that happened. But the police came? They did, because she lied and said I hurt her. But there were lots of people who saw what really happened, and they told the police the truth. So the police said I didn't do anything wrong. Lily processed this, her child's mind working to reconcile the stories. Why would she lie? Because some people don't like admitting when they're wrong. They'd rather blame someone else than accept responsibility for their own behavior. That's not fair. No, it's not. But that's why it's so important to always tell the truth, even when it's hard, because lies hurt people. She nodded against his chest, accepting this explanation. I told Mrs. Patterson what Tommy said. She said she'd talked to his mom about spreading rumors. Good. And Lily, if any kids ask you about this again, you can tell them exactly what I told you. Your dad stopped someone from hitting him, and he did it without hurting them back. That's called self-defense, and there's nothing wrong with it. Later, after Lily was asleep, Evan called Jennifer. Clarissa's PR firm is apparently spreading stories to parents at Lily's school. Can we do anything about that? It's hard to prove unless we can directly link the rumors to Clarissa or her representatives, but I'll send Morrison and Associates a cease and desist letter, making it clear that any further attempts to damage your reputation will result in a defamation suit. Jennifer's voice was grim. She's targeting Lily now. That's a line she shouldn't have crossed. She's been targeting Lily from the beginning, using her as leverage, as a vulnerability. Then we stopped letting her. I'll have the letter sent tomorrow, and Evan, document everything, what Lily told you when the rumors started, any other incidents, build the case we'll need if this goes further. That night, Evan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to his house settle around him. He thought the battle was over, thought Clarissa's termination and public humiliation had ended the conflict. But people like her didn't stop because they lost once. They regrouped, adapted their tactics, found new vulnerabilities to exploit. And his greatest vulnerability slept down the hall, innocent and trusting, believing her father could protect her from anything. He would protect her. Whatever it took, however long the fight lasted, he would keep Lily safe from Clarissa's malice, even if it meant finally becoming the person he'd spent 8 years trying not to be. The cease and desist letter hit Morrison and Associates on Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, Clarissa's response arrived, not through lawyers, but through action. Evan's phone rang while he was conducting afternoon training, Richard's name flashing on the screen. "Evan, we have a situation. Can you come to my office?" 10 minutes later, Evan stood in Richard's corner office overlooking the city, watching his employer's expression cycle through anger and calculation. Richard's assistant had printed out several documents, spreading them across the conference table like evidence at a crime scene. "Clarissa's new firm filed a civil lawsuit this morning," Richard said without preamble. "She's suing you for assault, emotional distress, and defamation. She's also suing me personally for wrongful termination and filing a separate suit against Bellamy's." Evan felt the familiar cold weight settle in his chest. On what grounds? On grounds that are complete fabrication, but that will cost significant time and money to defend against. She's claiming you attacked her unprovoked, that the witnesses were coerced into lying, that the video was edited to misrepresent events. She's claiming I fired her to cover up the incident and protect you. Richard's jaw tightened. And she's filed a motion requesting that CPS reopen their investigation based on new evidence of your violent tendencies. What new evidence? There isn't any, but the motion forces CPS to at least review the case again. More bureaucracy, more scrutiny, more opportunities to find something they missed the first time. Richard met Evan's eyes. She's using the legal system as a weapon, burying us in litigation, forcing us to spend resources on defense, creating enough noise that some of the mud inevitably sticks. Can she win? In court? No. We've got too much documentation proving she's lying, but that's not her goal. Her goal is to make fighting her so expensive and exhausting that we give up, that you give up. Richard's expression hardened. She's betting you can't afford a prolonged legal battle, that eventually you'll accept a settlement that includes a gag order and an agreement to drop all claims against her. She's wrong. I know. That's why I called you up here. Richard pulled out a chair, gesturing for Evan to sit. My lawyers are handling the suits against me and Bellamy's, but your personal suit is different. It's specifically designed to drain your resources and threaten your custody of Lily. I'm offering to cover your legal defense costs completely. Jennifer Torres and her entire firm, all billable hours, all court costs. I'll handle it. Evan sat slowly, processing the offer. Why? Because Clarissa Vaughn has spent years using her wealth as a weapon against people who couldn't fight back. Because you defended yourself responsibly and are being punished for it. Because I'm tired of watching bullies win through financial attrition. Richard leaned forward. And because you work for me now. When someone goes after my people, they go after me. That's a lot of money. I have a lot of money. Let me use it for something that matters. Before Evan could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Amy. Lily's school called. Someone filed a complaint claiming you're unstable and shouldn't be allowed on school property. Principal wants to meet with you tomorrow. Evan showed Richard the message. The older man's expression went from angry to furious. She's escalating everywhere simultaneously, creating multiple fronts, forcing you to defend on all of them, hoping something breaks. Richard pulled out his own phone. I'm calling my PR team. If Clarissa wants to fight dirty, we'll show her what happens when someone with actual resources decides to fight back. The next 24 hours moved with the compressed intensity of crisis. Jennifer and her team filed responses to all 3 lawsuits, including a countersuit against Clarissa for malicious prosecution and harassment. Richard's PR firm began circulating the full story to media outlets, not just the Bellamy's incident,
but Clarissa's history of using false allegations as weapons, the parking attendant she'd destroyed 2 years ago, the pattern of abuse spanning a decade. Friday morning, Evan met with Lily's principal, Mrs. Henderson, in her office. She was in her late 50s, a career educator with the kind of steady competence that came from years of navigating parents, politics, and childhood crises. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming in." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "I received a complaint yesterday from a concerned parent claiming you pose a danger to students. The complaint was anonymous, but it referenced the incident at Bellamy's and included allegations about violent behavior, all of which have been investigated and found to be false." Evan kept his voice level. CPS closed their investigation with a finding of unfounded allegations. The police declined to press charges. Multiple witnesses confirmed I acted in self-defense. "I'm aware. I spoke with Sarah Winters from CPS yesterday. She was quite emphatic that the allegations against you were retaliatory and baseless." Mrs. Henderson's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Brooks, I've been Lily's principal for 2 years. I've watched you at parent-teacher conferences, at school events, dropping off and picking up your daughter. You're one of the most engaged parents we have. Nothing about your behavior suggests instability or danger." "Then why am I here?" "Because I'm required to investigate any allegations involving student safety, but also because I wanted you to know that this school will not be weaponized against you." Mrs. Henderson pulled out a file. "The complaint included a demand that you be banned from school property. I'm denying that request. You're welcome here any time, same as any other parent." Relief flooded through Evan. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just keep being the father Lily needs. That's the best response to people trying to tear you down." Mrs. Henderson stood, extending her hand. "And Mr. Brooks? If you need a character reference for any legal proceedings, I'd be happy to provide one." That evening, as Evan helped Lily with homework, his phone rang. Diana Chen. "Mr. Brooks, I wanted to give you a heads up before my article runs tomorrow. I've been investigating Clarissa Vaughn's history for the past 2 weeks. The story is much bigger than what happened at Bellamy's." "How much bigger?" 7 confirmed victims over the past decade. People she's targeted with false allegations, lawsuits, or coordinated harassment campaigns. Most of them settled quietly because they couldn't afford to fight. But I've got them on record now, willing to tell their stories if it means stopping her from hurting anyone else. Why are they talking now? Because you fought back and won. Because seeing someone stand up to her successfully gave them courage. And because Richard Holbrook's lawyers contacted several of them about joining a class action suit against Clarissa for pattern harassment. Diana paused. "This story is going to destroy what's left of her reputation. I wanted you to know that before it happens." "Will it stop her lawsuits?" "Probably not immediately, but it will make them much harder to pursue. Judges don't look kindly on plaintiffs with documented histories of filing false claims." Diana's voice carried satisfaction. "Mr. Brooks, you didn't just defend yourself that night at Bellamy's. You exposed someone who's been terrorizing people for years. That matters." Saturday morning brought Diana's article, front page of the Metropolitan Herald, both print and online. The headline read, "Pattern of Abuse: How One Woman Weaponized the Legal System Against Service Workers." The story was devastating. 7 victims, each with documented evidence of Clarissa's campaigns against them. The parking attendant who'd lost his job, a hotel maid she'd accused of theft, a personal trainer she'd claimed sexually harassed her, a restaurant manager, a delivery driver, an executive assistant, all of them targeted with false allegations, all of them suffering real consequences, all of them lacking the resources to fight back effectively. And then Evan's story. Not as an isolated incident, but as the culmination of a pattern. The moment when Clarissa had finally targeted someone with both the skills to defend himself and, through Richard's support, the resources to fight back. The article went viral within hours. By noon, national news outlets were picking it up. By evening, legal experts were being interviewed about the implications. Victim advocates were calling for investigations, and social media had erupted in fury at Clarissa's decade of weaponized accusations. Sunday morning, Evan woke to find his phone flooded with messages, reporters requesting interviews, victims from Diana's article wanting to thank him.
Marcus Webb from the security consulting firm that had originally tried to recruit him, offering congratulations. And one text from an unknown number that made Evan's blood run cold. "You've destroyed everything I built. I hope you're proud of yourself." He forwarded it to Jennifer, who responded immediately. "That's a direct threat. Forwarding to police and filing for a restraining order. Do not engage, do not respond." Monday brought the hearing for the restraining order. Evan sat in family court beside Jennifer, watching Clarissa's new lawyer, a sharp woman in her 40s named Patricia Morrison, argue that the text message was taken out of context, that her client was merely expressing frustration, that there was no credible threat. The judge, a gray-haired man who'd clearly read Diana's article, was unimpressed. "Ms. Morrison, your client has a documented pattern of retaliatory behavior. She's filed multiple lawsuits against Mr. Brooks despite evidence showing her allegations are false. She's attempted to have his daughter removed from his custody through baseless CPS complaints. She spread rumors at his daughter's school." The judge looked at Clarissa over his reading glasses. And now she sent him a message that any reasonable person would interpret as threatening. "I'm granting the restraining order. Your client is to have no contact with Mr. Brooks, his daughter, his place of employment, or his daughter's school. Violation will result in contempt charges." Clarissa's face went white, then red. She leaned toward Patricia Morrison, whispering urgently. Her lawyer's expression suggested the conversation wasn't going well. "Your Honor," Patricia said carefully, "my client would like to request a brief recess to discuss potential settlement negotiations." "Settlement of what? The restraining order is not negotiable." "Settlement of all pending litigation. My client is willing to drop her lawsuits against Mr. Brooks, Mr. Holbrook, and Bellamy's in exchange for all parties agreeing to mutual non-disparagement." Jennifer stood immediately. "Absolutely not. My client has done nothing requiring settlement. If Ms. Vaughn wants to drop her frivolous lawsuits, she's welcome to do so. But we're moving forward with our countersuit for malicious prosecution." The judge nodded approvingly. "Ms. Morrison, unless your client is prepared to offer something substantive, such as a public apology and agreement to pay Mr. Brooks's legal fees, I suggest we end this discussion. The restraining order stands. This hearing is concluded." Outside the courthouse, Evan felt something release in his chest that he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Jennifer was already on her phone, coordinating with Richard's legal team. "That went better than expected," she said when she hung up. "Clarissa's desperate. The article destroyed her credibility. Her lawyers know they can't win, so they're trying to minimize damage." "What happens now?" "Now we wait for her to drop the lawsuits, which she will, probably within a week. Then we pursue our countersuit unless she offers an acceptable settlement, which means public apology, payment of all legal fees, and agreement to never contact you or anyone in your life again." Jennifer's smile was sharp. "We're negotiating from strength now. She knows it. Her lawyers know it. It's just a matter of time." The week that followed felt like watching dominoes fall. Tuesday, Clarissa dropped her lawsuit against Evan. Wednesday, she dropped the suits against Richard and Bellamy's. Thursday, Morrison and Associates released a statement saying they were parting ways with Ms. Vaughn due to irreconcilable differences regarding litigation strategy, which everyone understood meant Clarissa's lawyers had abandoned her. Friday afternoon, Patricia Morrison called Jennifer directly. "My former client would like to propose a settlement," she said without preamble. Jennifer had put the call on speaker so Evan could hear. "She'll issue a public apology acknowledging that Mr. Brooks acted appropriately in self-defense. She'll pay $100,000 to cover his legal fees and compensate for damages. And she'll sign a legally binding agreement to never contact Mr. Brooks, his daughter, his employers, or anyone associated with him. Plus a statement that all her allegations were false," Jennifer added, not just acknowledging his self-defense, but explicitly stating she lied about him attacking her, about him being unfit as a parent, about all of it. Silence on the other end. Then, "She won't agree to call herself a liar in a public document. Then we go to trial and let a jury decide. I've got 7 other victims ready to testify about her pattern of false allegations. We'll win, she'll lose, and the judgment will be much more than $100,000. Jennifer's voice was steel. "This is the offer. Take it or leave it. I'll call you back." 10 minutes later, Patricia Morrison called again. "She agrees. Draft the settlement and I'll have her sign it." The settlement was finalized the following Wednesday. Clarissa's statement appeared on her social media accounts, which still existed despite her having deleted most content, and was sent to major news outlets. I, Clarissa Vaughn, wish to make the following statement regarding events at Bellamy's restaurant and subsequent allegations against Evan Brooks. Mr. Brooks did not attack or assault me. I initiated physical contact, I attempted to strike him, and he defended himself with appropriate and minimal force. My subsequent allegations that he was violent, unstable, or unfit to parent his daughter were false and made in retaliation for his refusal to accept my inappropriate behavior. I apologize to Mr. Brooks, his daughter, and everyone affected by my actions. I accept full responsibility and will make no further contact with Mr. Brooks or anyone associated with him. The statement generated its own wave of media attention. Evan ignored most of it, focusing instead on the life he was rebuilding. Work continued with Richard's security team. Lily's dance recital approached. Amy started talking about going back to school full-time now that Evan's schedule was more predictable. 2 weeks after the settlement, Evan took Lily to the park on a Saturday afternoon. It was the same park near her school where Sarah Winters had interviewed her, where swings creaked in familiar rhythms, where children played with the unself-conscious joy that adults spent years trying to recapture. Lily ran ahead to the swings, her new bracelet catching sunlight, her laughter carrying across the playground. Evan followed more slowly, his phone buzzing with a text from Richard. Board approved your promotion, Director of Security Operations, effective immediately. Congratulations. He pocketed the phone without responding, not wanting work to intrude on this moment. Lily called for him to push her higher, and he obliged, watching her rise and fall against blue sky, her face alight with simple pleasure. Daddy? She called down during one of the swing's backward arcs. Are the bad things over? The stuff with that mean lady? Yeah, Pumpkin, the bad things are over. Good. Because I like it when you're happy. You smile more now. I smile because of you, Lily, always because of you. She pumped her legs, soaring higher, and Evan stepped back to watch. His daughter, safe and whole and innocent of how close they'd come to losing everything. His job, stable, and using skills he'd thought were permanently retired. His life, no longer defined by survival, but by actual choices about the future. A woman approached the swings with 2 children in tow. She looked familiar, and after a moment Evan placed her, Michelle Ortiz, the woman from Clarissa's dinner party who'd tried to intervene. Mr. Brooks? She smiled tentatively. I wasn't sure if you'd remember me. Of course. Michelle. I heard about the settlement. I'm glad it's over. Her children ran to the monkey bars, leaving the adults in relative privacy. I wanted to thank you, actually, for standing up to her. I spent 10 years watching Clarissa destroy people and telling myself it wasn't my responsibility to stop her. What you did, forcing consequences, making it impossible to ignore, that changed things. She can't hurt anyone else now. I was just defending myself. You were, but in doing so, you protected everyone she might have targeted next. That matters. Michelle glanced at Lily, who was now attempting to jump from the swing at its highest point. Your daughter's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. After Michelle left, Evan and Lily walked to the ice cream shop 2 blocks away, a weekend ritual they'd established years ago. Lily got her usual, chocolate chip cookie dough, and Evan got coffee, and they sat on the bench outside sharing comfortable silence. Daddy? Lily said after finishing half her cone. When I'm bigger, will you teach me the stuff you know? About protecting people? What kind of stuff? The stuff you did when that lady tried to hit you. How to stay calm even when people are mean. How to stop people without hurting them. Evan looked at his daughter, seeing not just the 7-year-old in front of him, but the person she was becoming. Strong like her mother had been before drugs. Thoughtful like he tried to be. Brave in ways neither of her parents had managed. When you're older, if you still want to learn, I'll teach you. But Lily, the most important thing isn't the physical techniques. It's understanding that real strength means protecting people, not dominating them. It means choosing not to hurt people even when you could. That's what I want you to learn most. I know that already, she said simply. You show me every day. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat at his kitchen table with the paperwork for his promotion, Director of Security Operations. A salary that would let him save for Lily's college, buy instead of rent, stop choosing between fixing the car and buying groceries. A career using skills he'd trained for instead of hiding them. His phone rang. Jennifer. Just wanted to make sure you got the final settlement check. $100,000 minus my fees should leave you about $82,000 after taxes. I got it. Thank you, Jennifer, for everything. You did the hard part. I just filed paperwork. She paused. Evan, I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've represented people accused of crimes they committed and people accused of crimes they didn't. You're one of the rare ones who was genuinely innocent and still had the strength to fight back. That's not common. I had help. You, Richard, Amy, Diana, I didn't do this alone. No one ever does. But you were the one standing in that dining room when it counted. You were the one who chose restraint over retaliation. That was all you. After hanging up, Evan walked upstairs to check on Lily one final time. She slept peacefully, her stuffed elephant clutched close, her breathing even and calm. The nightlight cast familiar shadows on walls covered with her drawings, her participation ribbons from dance class, the detritus of childhood that marked a life being lived fully. This was what he'd fought for. Not victory over Clarissa Vaughn, though that had come. Not a better job, though that had come too. But this, the simple continuation of a child's innocence, the protection of her right to grow up without being weaponized in adult conflicts, the preservation of their small, carefully constructed life. He'd been afraid when Clarissa first attacked him that defending himself would expose something dangerous, that the person he'd been in the military, the skills he'd carried from that life into this one, would prove he was unsuited for normal existence, that choosing not to be a victim would somehow make him the villain. Instead, he'd learned something more complex. The skills themselves weren't good or evil. They were tools, neutral until applied. What mattered was the choice behind their use, protection versus domination, defense versus aggression, the strength to stop threats versus the strength to create them. He'd chosen protection, chosen defense, chosen to be strong enough that violence became unnecessary rather than inevitable. And in doing so, he'd shown Lily something more valuable than any physical technique. He'd shown her that power meant having choices, that real strength meant knowing when not to use force, that dignity didn't require submission, but it also didn't require cruelty. Evan returned downstairs, double-checking locks out of habit, setting the alarm, turning off lights. Outside his window, Riverside settled into its nighttime rhythms. Working families getting what sleep they could before tomorrow's shifts, single parents like him making sure their kids were safe, ordinary people living ordinary lives. Except his life wasn't ordinary anymore. He had a career that matched his capabilities. He had resources to protect his daughter. He had allies who'd stood beside him when it mattered. And he had proof, hard-won and documented, that standing up to bullies was possible even when they had money and power on their side. His phone buzzed one final time. A text from Amy. Saw the settlement statement online, proud of you. Drinks this weekend to celebrate? Evan texted back, absolutely, and thank you for everything. That's what family does. Family, not by blood or marriage, but by choice and commitment. Amy, who'd helped raise Lily when Evan was working doubles. Richard, who'd provided resources when Evan had none. Jennifer, who'd fought legal battles he couldn't have won alone. Diana, who'd exposed the truth when Clarissa tried to bury it. All of them family in the ways that mattered, all of them proving that strength multiplied when shared. Evan climbed the stairs to his bedroom, exhaustion finally catching up with him now that the crisis had passed. Tomorrow would bring work and parenting and the mundane challenges of regular life. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, he could sleep without fear, because the battle was over. Clarissa had lost not through violence, but through exposure, not through domination, but through documentation. Her weapon had been money and false allegations. His had been truth and the courage to stand behind it. And in the end, truth had proven more powerful than wealth, courage more valuable than resources, character more lasting than reputation. Evan Brooks had entered Bellamy's restaurant weeks ago as an invisible waiter, someone wealthy. Patrons looked through rather than at. He'd left as someone who refused to be invisible, who demonstrated that dignity didn't require permission from people who thought they could take it away. The city lights glittered outside his window, each one representing a life being lived, a story being written. His story had intersected with Clarissa's in violence and had ended in justice. Somewhere out there, she was living with consequences for the first time in her adult life. Somewhere out there, the people she'd previously destroyed were seeing proof that bullies could be stopped. And here, in this small house in Riverside, a single father lay down to sleep with his daughter, safe in the next room, his job secure, his future brighter than it had been since before he'd chosen to leave his old life behind. He'd kept his promise to Lily, kept them together, kept her safe. And he'd done it without becoming someone she'd need to fear. That was the real victory. Not beating Clarissa, though he had. Not getting a better job, though he had. But remaining the father Lily needed while also being the man circumstances had demanded. Strong enough to protect, wise enough to choose peace, brave enough to stand firm when tested. That was who Evan Brooks had always been. The only difference was that now everyone knew it. And that knowledge, that proof of character revealed under pressure, was worth more than any salary, any settlement, any revenge. It was simply the truth. And truth, once established, was impossible to take away. Evan closed his eyes, letting sleep claim him, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but that he'd face them the same way he'd faced everything else, with love for his daughter, with commitment to doing right, with the quiet strength of someone who'd learned that power wasn't about dominating others. It was about refusing to be dominated yourself. The morning would come, as it always did, and he'd be ready for it, same as always, but different in ways that mattered, not just surviving anymore. Finally, living.